of the issues. And oh, yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Tuesday. Around here, it's always about the food, so we call it Taco Tuesday. Hit it.
But more importantly, y'all know what today is, right? It's Taco
Tuesday! Speedy Gonzalez is telling us it's Taco Tuesday. We're going to have a good one. We got a lot of good stuff going on. So coming up today, halfway through. Oh, by the way, I'm sorry. He did look slighted over there.
Hey there.
Hey, JP's pushing buttons on the board.
Hey, what's going on?
Well,
to be fair, I'm not running for Senate, so things take priority.
I'm sorry. You are the JP. You are absolutely the JP. So
well, yeah, I may just jump in and challenge Barry Moore to a Senate race later. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, there's a news flash.
Definitely not doing that.
Speaking of which, coming up at halfway through hour number 2, we got Congressman Barry Moore from down yonder in the 1st District in the Wiregrass region of Alabama, who just announced today he is running for the U.S. Senate. So I've known Barry Moore for a while. We served together in the Alabama legislature. He went on to do great things in Congress, and I became a radio guy. But yeah, Barry Moore is a great guy, and he and his wife, Heather, have really made a name for themselves as conservatives. And he's going to be on with us halfway through hour number 2. So stand by for that as he is running for the U.S. Senate. And then I got a triple dipper filled up with stuff. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right. The Triple Dipper. 3 stories, 3 themes. If you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, I'm going to be talking about this situation in Texas, which has now broadened into a much bigger discussion about gerrymandering. What is gerrymandering? When do they do gerrymandering? Is gerrymandering okay? Is that a derogatory term? Is it an official term? And is gerrymandering something that is hypocritical? Well, yes, it is. So number 1 on the Triple Dipper, I'm talking about gerrymandering hypocrisy. It's okay when Dems do it. Oh, no, don't you ever let the Republicans draw another line. But we'll talk about what all that means and what's being said about it. Gerrymandering hypocrisy is number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, I got a dim view of the dim views. You like what I said there? I got a dim view of the Democrat views. I'm amazed that Democrats want to serve this country allegedly and yet hate it at the same time. How do they sleep at night? How do they reconcile themselves? We're going to talk about my dim view of dim views as number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, look, I got a batch of things that I kept seeing stories and I'd kind of shovel them off the side. And I see another one that I kind of hold it in abeyance too. Next thing I know, I had a stack of things that is called things that make you go, like, why is that? Who thought that was a good idea? When did that happen? Things that make you go, if we can get to it, we'll do it. Number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, let me jump on into today's Rightside Way opening monologue. I'll remind you guys that every single day, attorney Stan McDonald, a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee, he is indeed your daily sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue. He's a longtime conservative, and I'll tell you more about Stan here in just a few minutes. All right, so let me just start off by saying I used to go backpacking quite a bit. I loved it. It was one of my favorite things in the world to do, and I don't know when I got away from it. I think my life got different, but I say used to because, like I said, it doesn't happen anymore. Maybe my life got busier. Maybe it got too serious. I don't know. Maybe I got to where sleeping on the ground didn't have near as much allure as it used to. But I loved hiking all day to be able to pitch a tent and sit by the fire at night. I spent time in the Rockies, but my usual backpacking trips were in the Southeast within a stone's throw of home, like in the Smokies or the Appalachian Trail region or along the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama. One of my favorite trails that I did multiple times was to hike from a place called Amicalola Falls in North Georgia up to what is known as the Advanced Trail for about 8.3 miles over some pretty serious terrain to get to Springer Mountain. Springer Mountain is where the official southern end of the Appalachian Trail is located. And it was a tough hike, no doubt. It was felt like more uphill than downhill. On one particular trip, I went up there with a friend, and we made the ascent all the way up to the top of Springer Mountain, Georgia. We found a trail shelter there, which really a trail shelter more often than not is like a 3-sided raised floor with a roof, but it gets you off the ground and out of the rain. So we slept in the shelter feeling pretty good about ourselves in that long 8.3 mile hike in. And the next morning we were up heating some water to make our morning coffee, and another hiker came walking up. He had a beard down to his chest, and all of his gear looked pretty well worn, like good quality gear, but all really kind of like worn down a bit. We greeted each other, and he asked where we had come from. And I said, we hiked up from the Hot Falls, and I felt pretty good about myself when I said it. And he said something pleasant, and then I asked him the same. What about you? Where'd you come in from? He just sighed and said, Maine. And I was slack-jaw amazed. He followed up by saying, really almost disbelievingly, he said, yeah. He said, seeing you here on Springer means I just finished 6 months, 634 miles straight through. Well, at that point, I had nothing. I mean, he was what is known in whispered tones as a through hiker, somebody who starts the Appalachian Trail at Mount Katahdin in Maine and doesn't stop until they get all the way to Springer Mountain, Georgia. And many start, but few make it. And it was an honor to talk to him for a bit and even to offer him a cup of coffee and to realize that somebody else can come along and they can have a story that casts shadows on all the rest. Kind of put me in my place in the right way. And I took it the right way, even offered him a cup of coffee. And I can say all that because A, it's a cool story, but B, because in my opinion, what I just described to you is sort of indicative of the way Democrats are viewing Trump right now, but without the congratulatory cup of coffee. Dems think they had trouble on the border. Trump fixed it. Dems think they know how to fix crime, but then Trump actually fixes it. Dems want to know how to lower the cost of eggs, but then Trump actually does it. Dems want to strengthen our industrial base, but then Trump takes it to the next level. Dems want social justice, and then Trump teaches them about actual justice. And they're puffed up thinking they got something going on, and every time they turn around, Trump actually outdoes them. It's all pretty funny in a clown show sort of way. And they're like really apoplectic right now. I mean, Democrats are like a school of minnows that dart and dash in all directions every time a shadow crosses the water. I mean, they're just going everywhere. Democrats are like running constantly and nobody's even chasing them. Maxine Waters is always good for a half-baked soundbite that said that Trump is trying to start a civil war. She said that yesterday. Wow. I'll play that clip for you later. Maxine Waters, a civil war, she says. Well, that's some messy talk right there. Does anybody really believe that? I mean, not for a minute, really. The states that make up this nation are intertwined. I mean, like it or not, California has one of the largest economies in the world just by itself. Texas is host to multiple U.S. military installations. Colleges in every state host kids from every state to come to their schools. Cars that are made in Alabama are sold in New York. Goods that are shipped from overseas arrive in ports in Louisiana and get shipped all over the United States. Crab that's caught in Maine is eaten in Illinois, and potatoes grown in Iowa are eaten in Tennessee. But I will say that the Civil War hyperbole has been a little bit more ostentatious on the left recently. The left uses the idea of civil war like a bludgeon. It's an accusation. It's a tactic. How many times have we had to endure the endless leftist cajoling about the so-called insurrection of January 6th? That infamous day when armed insurgents stormed the nation's capital with the intent to overthrow the U.S. government, install a puppet government to do their bidding. Yeah, right. I'm sorry, that's not what happened. We're informed by the liberal media that Donald Trump is sure to become a dictator, capable of suspending habeas corpus, doing away with the Constitution and imposing martial law. Never mind that the Congress, the courts, and even his most ardent supporters would never stand for those kind of things, even if he had the slightest inclination to even do so. It's as if the Democrats need a civil war just to prove themselves right. They post their memes about civil war and it makes them feel stronger in their liberal positions. Well, I got news. The regime media, the leftist politicians, the hand-wringing Karens, and the rioting activists don't realize that their rhetoric just makes them look foolish. And not just sort of foolish, but like full-on clown car, paste-eating, flag-burning foolish. Civil war is not on our horizon. The left knows that, and it is panicking because it needs it. The left needs to stoke division. They need to promote fear. Because as they learned so well during the pandemic, if you can stoke the passions of fearfulness, you can truly control a society. They need your fear. They feed on it. It gives the left strength. It gives them a wicked sense of hope that you will cow down and allow them to continue having their way. So they press on with their claims of insurrection and dictatorship and brewing civil war. But having said all that, I want to talk about what we have to ultimately be careful with on our own side. What we have to be careful with on the right is to not allow a batch of stupid to break out. A batch of stupid. Think about it. One moment of stupid on our southern border. One moment of passion from someone who feels aggrieved. One shot, single shot even, fired in anger. or a threat to a liberal politician or a demonstration that gets out of hand, and the left will pounce on it and they will yell, aha, we told you so, civil war. And we cannot give them that satisfaction. Look, stupid is as stupid does, according to the great philosopher Forrest Gump, and we need to keep the stupid tamped down. But I'm also going to lay this on you. I am not saying don't take action. I am not. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is don't take stupid action. There was a scene in the movie Gladiator in which Maximus looked at Senator Gracchus and he said, the time for half measures and talk is over, Senator. And I will add to that what Ronald Reagan once said. The future does not belong to the faint-hearted, it belongs to the brave. We do not have the luxury of sitting idle. We can't. There is a true movement afoot right now to undo our culture, our traditions, and our liberties. And it's happening on a daily basis. And I'm concerned what our nation would have looked like if we had had to endure another 4-year Biden term. And we have made great strides in the last 6 months. And we have done right out in the open everything the Democrats hate, and we've done it right in their faces. But we cannot let that be undone by any one person who decides to take matters in their own hands and roll out a heaping batch of stupid and set us back. And make no mistake, the left is looking for it. They want to have that I told you so moment when one member of the right gets stupid and we all have to pay for it. But tamping down the stupid does not mean you hunker down and do nothing. It does not at all mean that we should play the safe game, not take chances or take decisive action. That's what it will take to recoup the ground that the left stole over the last 4 years. So I'm telling you, play hard, work hard, politic hard, but keep the stupid tamped down. One of my favorite passages from Scripture is 1 Chronicles 12. In that passage, we're told about a group of men who became known as David's mighty men. I've mentioned it to you on the show before. I've always pictured David's mighty men as like that close-knit group of guys who sat around the fire with William Wallace and Braveheart. You know what I'm talking about? Warriors who could handle themselves in battle despite all the odds, but there was not a touch of stupid in any of them. Nobody was known as being rash, disorderly, or undisciplined. One of the groups who made up parts of David's mighty men were the sons of Issachar. And it says in that passage of them that they were, quote, men who understood the times with knowledge of what Israel should do. Look, conservatives everywhere are getting busy. We are. People who have never gotten involved in anything more than Sunday school are now leading calls for change, organizing groups to lobby their elected officials. Local and state politicians are taking notice of this, and state houses are seeing the formation of state-level freedom caucuses. Moms are questioning school boards. Libraries are being brought back in line. There's a sense of purpose in our conservatism right now, perhaps more than we've ever seen in recent memory. And these are smart moves, and we need more smart moves and less stupid moves. The conservative right does not want civil war, regardless of what the left says. We just want our country back. We aren't spoiling for an actual fight. We're not screaming for blood. There's no true and organized effort for insurrection. Donald Trump is not a tyrant, and we are not stupid. But we are indeed fully and completely aware of our times. And we have knowledge of what America must do. And the time for half measures and talk is over. And that's a wrap for the Right Side Way. Well, I jammed a lot in there, but I hope you saw that what I'm saying is the left gets it in their mind that they know how to do things, but we're actually the ones showing them how to do things. At the same time, we can lose all that ground if we refuse to make smart moves. We have to make smart moves and keep the stupid tamped down. We can lose it all overnight if we're not careful. Don't give them the narrative. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. President Trump had a press conference today. He did. He's taken issue with the level of crime in our nation's capital, and I, for one, am glad. Washington, D.C., with a population of just over $700,000 has previously, $700,000 people has previously been branded as the murder capital of the world. Homelessness and vagrancy are all over the streets. But the kicker has been the violence perpetrated on people who work in Congress and the White House. That just happened here in the last couple of days, the last week or so. The story just broke the other day that a young man who worked for Doge was brutally assaulted because he tried to stop a young woman from being carjacked. Y'all, that's what's known as a flashpoint. It happens. You can be aggravated about something, aware of something that's not right, even wish that something would change, and then all of a sudden, there's a flashpoint, and that proverbial straw that broke the camel's back. And just like that, a bad thing goes from being something that people are aware of to something that people will no longer stand for. Well, I got to tell you, sometimes, though, there's a logjam. Sometimes there's a logjam that just can't seem to be broken. And then that one voice, that one personality, that one person with the strength of will and courage of their conviction, steps into the mix and the logjam breaks up. I mean, I can think of an individualized example. I'll never forget one such guy that worked with my team in Baghdad in 2004. My team was attached to an infantry battalion in central Baghdad under the 1st Cavalry Division. We were outside the wire like virtually every day. No matter what the cause at the time, cordon and search, raids, goodwill patrols, or visiting a local school to establish rapport, we always had an interpreter with us. Well, my team had 2 Terps. One of them was an Iraqi bodybuilder named Yusuf. I've probably told you about Yusuf before. He's hard to forget. He was, in fact, one of the biggest dudes I have ever met. Roughly 6'4", 6'5", well over 300 pounds. His arms were as big as my thighs. Look, I'm not small by any stretch, but Yusuf could make a guy feel anemic just standing next to him. He had one of those big lantern jaws and a sharp gaze that could just like freeze people in their tracks. But he would also crack a smile and laugh just as quick. He was also a Christian. I remember learning that he taught himself much of his English by having 2 Bibles, one in English and one in Arabic, and he would go back and forth between the 2 to compare. It made his day when I had Charlene help me get him a Gold's Gym sweatshirt in 4XL, if I recall. Look, one particular day we were in a spot in which the deputy division commander, a 1-star, showed up. He was walking past us when he saw Yusuf standing next to me, wearing this kind of maxed out old flak jacket that just made him look even bigger. And the general stopped in his tracks and goes, "Who are you?" Without blinking, Yusuf just pointed at me and said, "His bodyguard." To which the general said, "I believe that," and just walked on, shaking his head. But as good as it was to have Yusuf working as an interpreter, I got to say he was legendary when it came to get folks to do what was needed. It didn't take much. More than once, I saw him wade into an angry Arabic mob and just say some kind of loud, emphatic words I didn't understand, and folks would just do whatever he said. I mean, traffic jams were notorious. And being still on a Baghdad street for a U.S. soldier back in 2004 during the Shia uprising, that was a tactical no-no. If you were stuck, it meant you were also a target. Truly dangerous. So one particular day, near one of the worst sections of a Baghdad slum, the traffic was so snarled up and congested that my team's gun trucks were literally jammed in and we couldn't move. I was out on foot yelling and pointing my weapon at certain drivers who didn't seem to get my sense of urgency until one of them got a really wide-eyed look looking past me, and I turned around to see that he was watching Yusuf just moving in between the cars, and whatever Yusuf was saying to people was suddenly matched by the immediate clearing of the intersection. Well, things like that happened all the time, to include a major operation we conducted with a reinforced company in Sadr City, a section of Baghdad that was known for being horrible. Shots were being fired, explosions were going off, and Yusuf took up a bullhorn. He got 150 civilians into a safe zone and under control. Look, I tell you all that because to me, it's like one example of a man whose voice speaking into the moment can make a difference. And he or she, for that matter, doesn't have to be the size of my giant friend Yusuf. So turning my attention back to Trump now and the crime and the filth in D.C., leading up to the press conference that he had this morning, Trump put out a post on his Truth Social account, and he said this. He said, quote, "The American public is not going to put up with it any longer." He said, "Just like I took care of the border, where you had 0 illegals coming across last month from millions before, the year before," he said, "I will take care of our cherished capital, and we will make it truly great again." He said, "Before the tents and the squalor and the filth and the crime, it was the most beautiful capital in the world, and it will soon be that again. Thank you for your attention to this matter." I love it when he does that. Look, right now, we need that kind of leadership. The person that wades into that logjam and brings some kind of strength of will to the moment, motivating people to do what they might not otherwise have done. But I will also throw out a note of caution. There's an old saying that every good thing is not a God thing, right? Meaning that just because something can be done does And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the Southeast US of A, and I'll tell you more about that in a moment. But hey, first thing I got to do is tell you about Stan McDonald. So Stan McDonald, a partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law, daily sponsor of the Rightside Way monologue. Stan's not only a good lawyer, I know him personally, he's also, oh, by the way, a longtime conservative, been in the mix, in the trenches, in the fray on all the politics and the policies that people in Rightside Ruffian land care about. But as an attorney, I can just tell you right now, Stan McDonald is absolutely able to represent you in any local, state, or federal court. He has represented his clients in like thousands of real estate transactions over the years. I like to always say that if Stan McDonald's on your side, you're going to have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So that being said, Stan McDonald, I'm going to tell you how to reach him. You ready? It's Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man. Here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. And tell him you heard about it on Rightside Radio. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, no representation made that any other lawyer advertising on the show would be any better than Stan.
Shabam.
Ha! I think I'm enjoying the non-disclaimer disclaimer even better than the old disclaimer.
Oh, yeah. Obviously.
Hey, text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it, same number for both. Lines are open. And oh, by the way, don't forget, coming up at halfway through hour number 2, we got Congressman Barry Moore coming on to make his official right side announcement of his run for the U.S. Senate. So we'll talk to Congressman Barry Moore at that time. In the meantime, first couple of texts are already in. John from Huntsville says, spectacular monologue, Phil. Thank you. He said, in one time back when I was in better shape and during the extreme summer heat, I walked from a side street straight up to the peak of Montesano Mountain with a bike on my shoulders to see if I could do it. It's the only time I've ever done that. He said, but I felt good that I had accomplished my goal. There you go, man. He said, by the way, JP, I've already set up an ESPN college football pick'em for us called King of Sports JP, just in case you're interested.
Awesome. I have to check that out.
There you go. Yeah, hiking up Montesano Mountain, by the way, is no small thing.
No, it's not. I can concur.
That's a mountain.
Yeah.
Hey, is the cross still on Montesano Mountain?
It is. As far as I know.
Used to be able to see it from the valley, but
yeah.
I looked the other day and then I tried to do an internet search. I thought I saw that somebody had restored it or done some things to it, but I couldn't find it.
It may be. I mean, last I knew it was up there. We actually took a trip there at school to see it, and I guess I haven't been up there to check it out long enough. Maybe gone. I don't know.
I'll tell you what. If somebody out there in ruffian land knows if the cross is still on Montesano Mountain, I would like to know. And how do you see it? Thomas Mathens checked in and says, Colonel, great monologue as always. Thank you. He said, we definitely have to be actively engaged in smart ways. You are our right side guide to fight in non-stupid ways. Thank you. He said, the Dems are doubling down on anti-Trumpism, considering Mondani's anti-Trump tour of the 5 boroughs of New York City. He judges he has a better shot at mayor if he bashes Trump than he does by preaching his communism. Isn't that amazing? We were kind of talking off the air earlier about candidates who basically put Trump's face on something, whether pro or con, doesn't matter what, running for dog catcher, and they're all about Trump. And the idea that the guy's running for mayor of New York to counter Trump, my gosh. Anyway, that's it. We'll take a break. We'll come right back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Mean that it should. What we really need is not for the president of the United States to wade in and do this. What we really need is for local and state leadership to get off their political keisters and do the work themselves. It should not take the president of the United States having to intervene in Los Angeles by calling up the National Guard to stop the riots. It should not take the president reinforcing the federal courthouse in Portland to stop the Antifa rioters. And it should not take the president of the United States having to hold a press conference in the White House to address crime in the capital city. At a time when we have major issues of foreign policy, economic policy, national security, border control, energy sector growth, foreign investment, and more, all of which are rightfully on his plate, the president of the United States should not have to be distracted about whether or not his staffers or foreign dignitaries or tourists or everyday citizens who live in the DC area are going to be victims of violent crime right outside the gates of the White House. Shame on the local leadership for allowing this to rise to the level of having to take national attention. Look, local leaders, they need to do their jobs. Local leaders like the DC City Council, they need to be shamed into doing their jobs responsibly. Representative Byron Donalds of Florida, he just introduced a new bill in Congress. One that passed the House last year is designed to strip the DC City Council's authority to continue passing soft on crime local legislation. DC currently has no mandatory minimum sentencing for criminals under the age of 25. DC currently allows for no cash bail. Youth gangs are mollycoddled. Older gangs actually send the young ones out to do the crimes because they know they won't face jail time. A misdemeanor? That's just the cost of doing business for young criminals. Speaking about his bill, Donald said this. He said, "For far too long, our nation's capital has been plagued by an epidemic of violence due to the soft on crime policies of far left local leaders." He went on to say, "Weak leadership by anti-cop radicals gives rise to chaos, and the reign of terror unleashed on innocent residents and visitors of our nation's capital must end now." He said, "Congress has a constitutional responsibility to oversee the District of Columbia, and it's imperative that we act quickly to assert our control when local government fails to do its job." Look, I've been in those political meetings. I have, down in Montgomery, the kind where you get frustrated and look around the room and wonder why you can't get any movement. But then I've also been there and seen what happens when one person gets the attention of another and they agree to align their votes, and the momentum picks up and more get on board. And pretty soon you see the movement of a larger scale and the logjam breaks. And that thing they said couldn't get done, suddenly it gets done. Look, sometimes that leadership is the person who's a leader by virtue of their position, like a committee chairman or a majority leader, pro tem of the Senate, Speaker of the House. Those are folks that have leadership by virtue of their assignment and also hopefully by virtue of their merits. But then there's leadership that comes from earned attention, the kind that may not have a title to their name, but they're among the rank and file, and they are people who naturally are given to providing people leadership just from within the ranks. People will naturally want to know what that person says or does. All I'm saying is this: I don't care if it's within the ranks or somebody who's elected to be in local leadership, but somebody needs to rise up, someone at the local and state level, to give voice to the issues that are truly state and local. Band together, ask to be able to deal with things like strength in numbers. We need that kind of leadership right now, this very day. We need it for the way forward. And right now, it is not showing itself. We need to know that our elected officials at all levels will evidence the strength of will and serve as statesmen wherever they are. The President of the United States should not have to address crime on city streets. So break the log jams, make a difference, do it locally, and you'll be a hero. Hey, folks, you're going to enjoy this one. I just had a conversation with Brian Dawson from 1819 News, president and CEO of an up-and-coming company that is making a huge splash in the state of Alabama. But listen, you're going to be amazed by his personal story. Brian Dawson, you talk about rags to riches. You talk about somebody who's been redeemed. You're talking about a guy who is looking at life in prison, who now has an amazing family, an amazing life, an amazing testimony of how the Lord has redeemed him, and who is, oh, by the way, making a huge difference in our state. Stay tuned. Just Right Podcast. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the Southeast US of A. Y'all are talking about this show? Goes from like Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I'm talking about all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn. And straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And then, oh, by the way, that's just the radio. And then there's all y'all out there in the whole wide world going to the World Wide Web, live streaming the show, looking at us, like looking inside the studio right now, looking at us on places like Facebook and X and YouTube and Rumble and our website, rightside.media.org. And then all you guys that podcasted after the fact. All right, I say that a lot during the show because I just want to make sure you understand that we can see where y'all are. We know that you're there because the numbers pop up, and listen, it means the world to us. We do what we do, and we literally put this together just for y'all. The fact that you're there makes it all worthwhile. So thank you. You are much appreciated, more so than you could possibly imagine. I saw a couple of texts come in. Let me get it real quick. Roughly in from Huntsville about the cross up on Monticello. She says, I think it's still there. I haven't seen it in a while. Things are all grown up. And then she said, this is well established now. Beautiful site. And she sent me a link to a WH&T story. The 121-foot cross to overlook the heart of in Morgan County. I've seen that. That's, you know what? I wish it was closer to the interstate is the only thing. That one in Morgan County. You have to drive off the interstate to see it.
You know what's funny? when in elementary school, when we did a trip to visit it, I remember the guy showing us around was saying that the cross symbolized something like
On Montesano?
other than that, a cross for Jesus. And it was something about how he made it to symbolize something in it. It was like something symbolizing something in nature. And I remember being a kid being like, it's a cross, dude. It's for Jesus. It is a Christian cross.
It's all it is.
That's what it is.
And that's all it needs to be.
Yeah.
It's like you can't add to it. You can't take away from it. It is what it is.
Exactly.
That.
Yeah.
Wow. John from Huntsville says, cross is still there, Phil. I've hiked that trail multiple times. It's lit up sometimes when they have the funds to light it up because it does cost money to keep the lights on. Wow. Okay. So, all right, John, I'm going to go one step further, brother. If you happen to know, is it privately owned or is it something that's on public property? What are you saying? It seems to me, I recall that it was put up with private funds. I'm talking about when I was a kid. I mean, I'm old. I get senior coffee at McDonald's now, but I actually tripped out a guy this morning. We went to McDonald's for a meeting and I ordered a senior coffee and he goes, what? I said, you can too. But anyway, so what I'm saying is that thing's been up there for a long time. I'd like to know how to see it. Badger from Athens says, random thought and a question. Any Welcome Center rocket updates? That's funny you should mention that. You know what? JP and I both know a guy named Steve from Huntsville who listens to the show sometimes. And Steve was the one who was very active in that whole process. I need to get with him and find out what the status of it is. I don't know the answer, Badger. Thank you very much. Roughly Ann from Huntsville says, yeah, it's 1 mile off I-65 for the big cross in Morgan County. Yes, it is. There's another one just like that, roughly Ann. If you took, I think is it I-20? Yeah, if you took I-20 through Birmingham, straight across, and you get over towards where I think it's towards the Gardendale side, there's a giant cross just like that on the side of the interstate. Jack in Huntsville says, I used to canoe up the Algonquin Provincial Park in Ontario. Once you hump your canoe over the first 1 mile portage, it's like you own this beautiful 100-lake park by yourself. I guess because nobody else wants to hump that canoe all the way over. But yeah, portage is carrying the boat from one place to the other so you can sail on it again, right? Good stuff, man. All right, listen. I got these 3 dippers. They're all set. We're going to go, but I got to talk about a couple of breaking stories, a couple of things that happened. And one of them is not getting near the airtime that I think it deserves, but I'm going to explain why in a minute, what I think is going on there. The other is a guest that we now have coming on because we got the announcement. I was going to talk about it, but then lo and behold, we got hold of his people and they said, he wants to come on the show. I said, when? Today. Okay, let's do it. So Barry Moore is a congressman, very conservative from South Alabama. He hails from the Wiregrass region down near Dothan in that area. And Barry Moore and his wife, Heather, are just wonderful people. I've served with Barry in the Alabama legislature, and he has today declared his candidacy for the U.S. Senate. I will tell you, one of my only concerns is losing him in the House because the dude's a member of the Freedom Caucus. He's a great guy. But you know what? I believe we'll elect another Republican for that region, so I'm not too worried about whether it has an R by it, but I don't know that there'll be anybody as conservative as him. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to hear from Barry Moore halfway through hour number 2 in his decision now to switch from the House to the Senate. Good dude. You're going to want to meet him. Barry Moore running for U.S. Senate. By the way, that's a great field. We expect to have also Attorney General Steve Marshall, who's also running. He's going to be on the show here Thursday. So stand by for that. And then, of course, Jared Hudson, who's one of our contributors, he's already in the race and making a name for himself. And I think he's surprised some people with his fundraising capability. So all said and done, we got a deep bench for U.S. Senate. And the crazy thing is I know all of them, and they're all good dudes. Each one has an extremely different background. So Attorney General Steve Marshall was a career prosecutor in Marshall County, actually, and then became the Attorney General. So his life has been the practice of law and the prosecution of bad guys and the defense of great causes as an Attorney General. He's done a great job. Barry Moore is a businessman. I believe he has a waste management company. He's done extremely well for himself down in South Alabama and entered the state house and then later went to Congress and has done a great job becoming a conservative, carrying the conservative brand quite well. And then there's Jared Hudson, former Navy SEAL, now trains other Navy SEALs and law enforcement and also does human trafficking interdiction. I mean, you talk about 3 guys, and you know what? I happen to know for a fact all 3 of them love the Lord. I mean, you're talking about conservatives from our red state, Alabama, and they all love the Lord, and you'd be proud to have any one of them. This is crazy. You don't usually get that kind of a bench in the U.S. Senate. Are the Democrats running anybody? Do we know? JP, have you seen anybody?
Oh, yeah.
There is one?
Sweetsner, whatever his name is, that one guy.
Sweetser?
That one, what's his name? Kyle Sweetser or something like that. He was
Oh,
in the
boy.
at the DNC. He spoke at the DNC for Kyle Sweetser.
Is he the guy that used to be a Republican but claims he's an
yes.
anti-Trumper now, so he's a Democrat?
Yeah, he spoke at the DNC as the Alabama Democrat. He also was in one of Kamala Harris's campaign videos as I'm from Alabama, and Trump ain't good. That's that guy. But
Was he a white dude for Harris?
Yeah, but pretty much, yeah. So he's running for Senate. But his whole campaign rollout was I'm running against Tuberville, and now Tuberville's not in the race anymore. So he's I don't know. But yes, that's the only one I've seen.
Wow. Okay. Well, they sucked the life out of his campaign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tuberville said, I'm not running.
Yeah.
I guess he's not going to run for governor. All right. Anyway, that's one breaking story. The other breaking story is something that came out yesterday. So yesterday, the story broke. And by the way, on social media, I do a thing every morning called Thoughts on the Morning Drive. It's about 1.5 minutes long on the average. It's a video. I'm driving while I'm doing it, but I'm actually using it in a fixed no-hand stand, so don't worry. But I've got some comments about some general thing in the news every day. So this morning's was about what I'm about to tell you. If you want to see my morning drive, by the way, I'm getting a lot of feedback on it. It's on both Facebook and Twitter, X, every morning, usually somewhere around 9:30. But go check it out. And at Sin Phil Williams is my X address. And then, of course, you can find us under Rightside Media or as Phil Williams in Facebook. Now, that story is extremely interesting. This is breaking news. The narrative that we have right now is that FBI Director Kash Patel has just turned over to either Senate or House Oversight or both documentation of a whistleblower who worked as a member of the Democrat team in the House Intelligence Committee back in 2017. He was a 10-year veteran of House Intelligence as a staffer. And by the way, you may not realize it, but those committees are not just made up of the actual elected members. They all have staff. They do a lot of stuff. And they're working on House Intel. They have security clearances. They've got all these, they've got to be able to do things much like you might see in the Pentagon or the intelligence arena or whatever. They've got to have the ability to access information. This particular whistleblower, according to the documents that Kash Patel has now turned over, by the way, he didn't turn over something that could have been manufactured. He turned over sworn testimony of this guy saying back in 2017 that he was in a meeting with Representative, now Senator Adam Schiff, and that Schiff specifically requested that information from that House Intel Select Committee be leaked to the press for no other reason except that it would be able to discredit, undermine, and demean the presidency of Donald Trump, first term. Now, on the one hand, that's not surprising. On the other hand, what is very disturbing right now is to find out that this report was literally in the hands of deep staters at the FBI during the Trump term at a time when he was being assaulted daily in the press. This is what's known as exculpatory information. Lawyer Phil talking for a minute. If you're a criminal defendant, if you are somebody having to withstand the blows of accusations, and the other side actually has information that could assist you in your defense, it's called exculpatory. And that exculpatory information, if you're being, prosecuted, you're supposed to go ahead and be able to turn it over. You're supposed to turn it over to the defense and allow them an opportunity to mature that evidence for their own defense. It happens usually in the course of what's known as discovery. You turn over what you got, the evidence can't be provided only to one side. And yet the FBI sat on this while the entire Mueller investigation was going on, while the whole Russia collusion narrative was being bandied about, while Pelosi's talking about impeachment processes. And this whistleblower, now here's the thing, this whistleblower right now that we know of is a one-person unsubstantiated storyline. Okay, does that diminish the quality of it? Only slightly, because the testimony is, I was in a meeting with other people. The other people can easily be identified. I suspect they already have been. And those other people can be interviewed. What happens then? Those other people either agree with the story or they claim that the guy, was lying. And then at that point, one side or the other is lying. You want to lie to the FBI? Good luck. You want to lie to the FBI in an official investigation? Good luck. So what I suspect is happening right now is before they even turned this over, I would bet that Kash Patel had people do interviews with folks who were in that room to either substantiate or to diminish the veracity of that one story. But then Kash Patel turned it over to the House. I suspect he turned it over because there's more to the story. I suspect he turned it over to allow the House to do oversight, to do its work, and to bring in those same staffers, probably some of whom are still up there, and say, were you in that meeting? Well, I was. Did you hear Schiff say these things? Oh. And then either A, the first whistleblower is going to jail for lying in an official statement, or B, they're going to go to jail for not reporting it when they should have, or C, they're going to substantiate the story and say that they were under threat and they did not feel like they could say anything at the time. All right, one more piece of this. There are laws in place that protect whistleblowers for good reason, because you don't want somebody who has illicit information or criminal information who needs to report it in their official capacity to ever face reprisal for doing so. And yet, what we're seeing right now is the FBI sat on this information, sat on it through all the accusations and the impeachments and everything. They sat through the Mueller investigation. They sat on it and they did nothing with it. And you have to ask yourself, did they just not offer this whistleblower the protections he's supposed to have under the law? And then, this is just Phil talking, I look back at the last few days. Just in the last few days, top officials at the FBI have been summarily relieved of their duties. And then Kash Patel turned these documents over. And you have to wonder, was there an effort by the deep staters in the FBI to undermine Donald Trump in his first administration, so much so that they withheld exculpatory information? And now that we found out about it, some of them are losing their jobs, and now the information is being turned over to oversight. I'm telling you right now, it's a whole new day as the sunshine, the curtains are being drawn back and the sunshine is hitting some of these rooms. And there are deep staters right now that are having a complete freak out. Anyway, that story is huge. It's huge to me. Maybe it's the lawyer side of me that believes how much that story. By the way, the report that just got out about this document says that there are about to be more whistleblowers who are made known in the coming days. Separate subjects, or they're going to back up the guy from the meeting with Schiff? I want to know. All that to say, I got to go to a break right now. That was a long, good ramble. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. Next. Yeah, let's do a show. 1, 2, 3, hey! Brian Dawson, how you doing?
Doing good.
Good. I got notes, dude.
All right.
I'm gonna start with a sort of introduction. All right.
Hit me.
You was born and raised outside the state of Alabama. Spent a lot of your time in Colorado Springs. Am I right?
Yep. And Derby, Kansas. Those are the two places.
Does that make you a carpetbagger if you came from out west?
No, west is not north.
Okay.
So yeah, carpetbaggers only come from the north.
All right. So you're allowed.
Yeah.
You were a white suburban kid.
Correct.
But your parents divorced when you're young. I know that. I can relate to that. But then there's this period of your life. We'll talk about it in detail here in a minute. You've been very candid in some of the other interviews and discussions I've even had with you. Crime, drugs, drinking.
Sure.
And then there became time when you were even involved with drug cartels and other things and spent time in prison.
Yep.
At one point, I know you were facing like just short of 400 years potentially in prison. But then you found Jesus. You found a beautiful woman. You found purpose. You found parenthood like 7 times.
Correct.
It's
the number of completion, Phil.
Oh, well, there you go.
They say perfection and completion.
Speaking of which, we're going to get to the initials of all your kids' names too, which is very cool. And then now it's radio, media, 1819 News, president and CEO. So let's start. All right, let's just talk about it.
Yeah.
Early childhood, dude. How did you get to where you went?
Yeah. So interesting thing. I always like to, the more I learn about people and get to know people and everything, I realize who they are, where they're from, who their parents are matters a lot. And I also think Well, I'll just kind of go into that. So, my dad is from West Monroe, Louisiana. He is a swamp redneck. He grew up with Phil Robertson.
Duck Dynasty.
Duck Dynasty, okay.
Yeah.
Phil was about 7 years my dad's senior, and so Phil was the camp counselor at Camp Chioka in Louisiana. And so, my dad was like 10 and Phil was like 17 at the summer camp or whatever. But my grandma, Memu, as we call her, Betty Dawson, taught Sunday school with Miss K for 30 years at Whites Ferry Road Church of Christ in West Monroe, Louisiana. So I say all that because it's neat on one hand that my family is close with their family or whatever, but also to give you, like, everybody knows the Robertsons and the swamp redneck thing, right? Like, they're swamp rednecks with money. But prior to them having money, there was a saying in West Monroe that the only people that were more poor than the Dawsons was the Robertsons. Okay, and the Dawsons was po, like they were super poor. Okay, I would joke and say
they changed that over time.
Yeah, so they did. My dad not so much. That's okay though. Went the middle class route, but my dad, swamp redneck from Louisiana. Grew up, I always say, back when poor people were skinny, had to hunt for food, garden, like, so that's that side of my family. And then on the other side, there's my mom. My mom, and we'll kind of get into a little bit more of her background later in the story as it's pertinent, but she was the daughter of a state senator in Colorado, Colorado Springs specifically. And so my grandfather was a state senator. He ran for governor. He ended up running for Congress against Joel Heffley in Colorado. That was the only politics I was around for. All that happened before I was born, except for the run for Congress. And he has a country club background, right? And so you mix this swamp redneck with this country club, and this is where you get this amazing pedigree that sits before you.
Had this sort of Romeo and Juliet feel to it.
Yeah, I guess so. But that I really do think that plays a lot into who I am and how I go about things. But for better or for worse. But yeah, so they couldn't have been more different, and they got divorced when I was 2, right? Like who didn't see the writing on the wall with that one? So they got divorced when I was 2. Courts put me with my mom. That's kind of the knee-jerk reaction of the court system. At least it was back then. I don't think it's changed that much now. The knee-jerk reaction is give kids to mom. And had they have done any type of due diligence whatsoever and looked into the situation, they would have seen that was not the best place for me. And so when I was 2 years old, boom, I'm now living with my mom, seeing my dad every other weekend. And
where were y'all living then?
This was Colorado Springs. Okay. Yep. And so, my mom, God bless her, I love her. She did the best she could with what she had, right? And so I've worked through a lot of unforgiveness with my mom and with my dad, but just forgiving them and me thinking, I've forgiven them, but it's like, no, really. And then once you've forgiven them, you can actually see the appreciation that they did everything they possibly could. Now that I have kids, I see. But my mom had a very rough childhood, though she was from country club, lineage. She was sexually abused as a child. She, had all kinds of abuse and just horrible. And, so she had a lot of trauma in her life that she never dealt with. And so I'm living with her, and the solution to every problem that she has is another man. And so I ended up with like 5 or 6 stepdads. I lost count. Okay. Now I will say, I know there's no way you haven't seen the movie or read the book, Hillbilly Elegy.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So that.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. John from Brownsboro, Alabama says the cross is on Montesano. The cross is still there, and one house on the way down has a menorah in its front yard near. Oh, I know where that is. I know where the one with the menorah is. It's the cross is still there, and it's one house on the way down has a. Yeah. Okay. I know exactly. Okay. So that's how you get to it. All right. It's been so long since I've been up there, I could not even remember. Thomas from Athens says another large cross on I-65 near Prattville exit on the way to Auburn. Yes, it is. As a matter of fact, I'd forgotten about that one. That's right. It's on the way, like just before you get into the final descent into Montgomery. And another one is near Lenore City on the way to the UT game. There you go. John from Huntsville says, here's a more updated website than the one I just sent you. The cross at Burritt Mountain hiking trails. Okay, it has a Google map to it. Okay, very cool. Thank you so much. Jerry from Decatur says, Phil, I laughed to myself thinking when I observed men and women come out from the Appalachian Trail of Virginia looking like real ruffians. I heard some of them say, some of them meet and get married on the trail. How could they? I don't know. All I know is it's a commitment, man. You quit your job. You're not working. And these folks doing the Appalachian Trail, by the way, I've read several books. There's a great book. In fact, it was one of these very heartwarming books. Had a couple of moments though where it was so funny I just laughed out loud. It's called A Walk in the Woods, and this guy did the Appalachian Trail. What a lot of people do is they hike it in stages because they all have jobs. So they'll take 2 weeks off and they'll go hike a section, and the next year they'll come back with 2 weeks and they'll do another section. And their goal is to see how long it takes them to get the entire trail done. But then there's through hikers. Through hikers literally start at one terminus or the other. And a lot of times they stage it by the weather. They try to follow the weather in the right patterns. And so a lot of people start in the north and work their way south. And they'll start in the north during the warmer months. But then, the south is the humidity and all that down here is woo. So they'll work their way down to where I met that guy. We were wearing cold weather gear. It had to have been like November, December when I saw him. Because I love cold weather backpacking. That was my favorite. And he just, listen, through hikers are a special breed. And then a lot of times there's an art to it. If you're really doing it right, you actually mail yourself the provisions. You get a P.O. box at a mailbox along the way, and you have to come off the trail to get your provisions. So they'll mail themselves boxes, or their family will mail them at a certain time, and they'll go, to a certain place in the trail, jump off the trail to a town, pick up their box, go back on the trail and keep moving. It's really something. If you're not familiar, by the way, as long as I'm on backpacking, that thing I don't do much.
Well,
anymore.
we got 30 seconds to the break, so you might as well just keep going.
You need to go to the Pinhoti Trail in Alabama, starting in around Cheaha Mountain. The Pinhoti Trail is often referred to as the advance to the AT, the Appalachian Trail. And the Pinhoti Trail has some of the most rugged terrain, but beautiful territory. Going through the Cheaha area, you've got waterfalls, you've got caves, listen, it's amazing. But that one, I did some serious hiking through there. Harry in Huntsville's brand new in the text line. He just texted us that the cross at Burnt Mountain has a hiking trail Google map, maybe the same one that John just sent us. But Harry, thank you. We're glad you're in the text lines. Keep listening, keep texting in. In the meantime, I'm going to take a break. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, coming right back. Gerrymandering Hypocrisy. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
Life to a T with my mom. That was my life to a T. We watched that movie, and my mother and I were like, this is like maybe 6 months ago we watched the movie.
Together?
No. Okay. But I watched it. I was a wreck. My wife's looking at me. My oldest son, who's watched it with us, is like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, it was a wreck. And I told my mom about it. My mom watched it. And she's like, "Oh my gosh," it was like PTSD watching because it was so on point with that 2 to 10 years with my mom. And I always make the joke. Me and JD Vance are the same person, except JD Vance, he got into the Marines and went to Yale, and I got into drugs and went to jail. But other than that, same person. But yeah, and so when I was that went on, watching my mom get drunk, taking pharmaceutical drugs, I watched her get beat by some of the men that she was with. Just not good formative years from 2 to 10, right? And so by the time I'm 10, I get into a big fight with my mom, and she, despite many court battles for my dad to get custody of me that he continued to lose, my mom just let go and said, "You can go live with your dad." And so when I was 10, I went and moved with my dad, and he was living in Wichita, Kansas. He worked at Cessna for the bulk of his career in Wichita, Kansas.
So I got to tell you, and sometime I'll tell you my whole story, but I didn't wind up in jail, but I was headed there.
Yeah.
Parents divorced when I was young, lived with my mom, did not respond well to multiple marriages. Mom finally gave me the ultimatum as we had a big blow up. She sent me to live with Dad, who, by the way, was living in London, England, as an Army officer. And so I like to say God had to give me a 3-year timeout away from everything that I was used to for me to find him.
Yeah.
Of course, you had a 384-year timeout coming.
Potentially, yeah.
So let me ask you, you live with your dad. I researched before I sit down with you, and I'm watching other interviews you've done and stuff. And you said in one case that your dad's level of discipline and household, management was more what you needed, but you still wound up going down some roads.
Sure.
So you were, and I got to say, when going through all the news stories and things, your mugshot came up at some point.
A bunch, yeah.
And you were just a normal looking high school dude. I mean, you didn't have like body piercings and face tats, and you weren't doing gang signs in the mugshot. You just looked like a high school football player, which you were. Am I right?
Yeah.
But you also had this sideline gig of doing things that got you in big trouble.
Yeah. No, I'm an all in guy. Whatever I'm into, I'm all into it, and that's just the way I'm wired, and it was no different than that. And so, going to the structure that my dad provided, but me still falling, I think that was a great tee up. I've never thought about it in those terms, and it actually makes a lot of sense. So, I'm 10. I move in with my dad. He's still not a Christian to this day. So if you're listening, pray for my dad. But he put a roof over my head. He got up every day at 4:30 in the morning and went to work. He showed up to my football games. We ate dinner every night around the table. Okay. He was what he was supposed to be as a father, and he didn't have a father. His dad abandoned them, his siblings. So he never had a dad. And so the gaps that he was filling in were those real basic gaps that he completely lacked, which was the providing, the protecting, those type of things. And so he generationally fixed that, that basic blocking and tackling gap that a father is supposed to provide. But some of the areas where I'd say, and I don't mean this disparagingly, where he fell short, he's not a real good communicator where he can sit down and say, son, let me talk to you about manhood. Son, let me talk like that. Those weren't his things. He showed up and he did what he was supposed to do. And very, very grateful that I had the time with him that I did. It definitely shaped and molded me. But when from 2 to 10, which they call formative years, those are formative years, right? And your formative years are not very formative. You carry baggage. And so I'm with my dad in this structure, carrying that baggage. And so I would get straight A's on the report cards, and I thrived in that structure, and I did good in sports. But underneath, I was angry. And my stepmom would always tell me, she's like, you're so angry. Why are you so angry? And she didn't understand. And I was angry at the world. And I was never really comfortable in my own skin. I had a lot of insecurity issues. And the only time I ever felt comfortable in my own skin is when I drank and did drugs. And so I drank and did drugs a lot.
Sort of a self-medicating kind of thing?
I definitely think it was a self-medicating thing. And once I kind of dove into that, I became the life of the party. I created a fake ID. I've always been somewhat, innovative. I learned how to create a fake ID, and then I could go get everybody alcohol. So I was like the coolest guy, in school. I could go get everybody booze and, party. But like everybody else would like party and go home and be fine. I would drink to the point of blacking out and not remember what I did. And that would happen 2 or 3 times a week, right? Like I was like a wild party animal. And then that went on to the point where I started to do drugs. And same thing, whatever I do, I do it all the way. And that happened there.
But you didn't just do it, you were selling them too, right?
Yeah. And so how it started is, a little bit of weed, selling a little bit of weed, whatever. And then I would experiment with a little bit of cocaine or methamphetamines or ecstasy or whatever. And in that experimenting phase, I was still living in a suburb of Wichita called Derby, Kansas, with my dad. And
Do you have any siblings, by the way?
So I've got, from my mom, I have a brother who has a different dad.
Okay.
And he's Brad, and he's 2 years, 2 months, 2 days older than me. Anyway, probably not pertinent to the story, but it's interesting. And then I have a stepbrother. When my dad remarried, he remarried a woman, my stepmom, who had a son that was my exact age. So we were in the same schools together growing up.
Okay, wow, yeah.
Yeah. And he was also into partying and doing things, and also found himself in prison at some point in his life. So, I always want to go down rabbit trails, and it's like, I'm not going to rabbit trail, I promise. So that experimenting with some of those more illicit drugs, I snuck out one night to do that, and I came home after sneaking out thinking that because what I would do is I would sneak out, my bedroom would be shut, my dad would just get up and go to work. Well, he, for whatever reason that morning, needed something, and so he came in my room, and I wasn't in there. He's like, So I got busted sneaking out. And he took me to get a drug test, and I peed hot for every single thing on the drug test. And he was like, oh, wow. And so we kind of locked horns over that. And he said, you need to quit football and go to rehab, which is a really big deal. My team ended up 6A in Kansas, as big as it gets. They don't have 7A there. Yeah. And we were predicted to be the 6A state champs, or at least going to state.
What position?
I was defensive end, and they were going to move me to nose tackle that year. which was really interesting. I was like 225 and ran a 4.840, but they wanted me inside. Anyway, I won't get into that, but yeah. So that was my, I was really, really excited about my senior year, years and years of playing football, wanted to do that. And he's telling me I got to quit to go to rehab, or I can quit football and go live with my mom in Colorado again. And
like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 already. I don't even know where hour number 1 went. But hour number 2, here we are. I'm about to jump into a dipper. Let me get a few quick text messages so I can clean those up and see what you guys got on the. Here's what Bobby from Huntsville says on that Montesano cross. He says, Phil, I live on Montesano Mountain. And as a kid, I always remember the cross being the only thing you could see going up 431 except for the TV towers. Now the mountainside is littered with houses and you can't see the cross. Okay, so is it on? Okay, so it's on that side. All right, I'm just trying to picture where it is. Okay, that's great. I want to find it. I want to find a picture of it. Brand new texter, Tony from Elkmont. Tony, we're glad you're in the text lines. He says, the book, A Walk in the Woods, is better than the movie and worth a read, in my opinion. Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I thoroughly enjoy it. I think I still have it on my shelf. It's a great book. Especially the part that caused me to laugh out loud was when he considered what might happen if a bear came to his tent. That was worth the whole read. Tom with all the kids in Huntsville says, our trail life troop hikes the Sipsey. Oh, that's yes, the Sipsey Wilderness is wonderful. So I'm also reliably informed that lying to the FBI is a prosecutable offense. Yes, sir. I would say so. And then he switches back to the hiking again. Says camping at Montesano as well. There you go. Tom with all the kids. Matt from Madison says, this is off topic. Okay. He said, Caroline Levitt used the term panikins, and I found myself waiting for JP's sound effect. We need to find a way to offer that to her, or at the very least make a meme where every time she uses the term, we play it.
Yeah, that would go viral.
It would. All right, let's jump on in here. I got a topic, gerrymandering hypocrisy. So one quick update. This just happened in the last about 45 minutes. JP looked it up real quick during the break. So you remember the story right now. Texas is redrawing the lines for their congressional districts. They're redistricting. The odd thing is this is a midterm or mid-cycle redistricting. Usually what happens is the census is done every 10 years. I've been a part of this in the Alabama Senate. The census is done every 10 years. The legislature then convenes the next year. Like in my case, it was 2011. And we go through the process of drawing the lines, setting them up. They have to be population-based. If you're subject to the Voting Rights Act, which is a law, but it also really applied in a lot of ways to some of the southern states, like Alabama, then you are also scrutinized as to whether or not race was a factor, which we learned apparently race is supposed to be a factor, they say now, except that it has to be only in favor of, minority races. It's a weirdly infuriating process. Texas is doing a mid-cycle review and reapportionment. What does that mean? Are they allowed to do that? Well, it's a mix of federal and state law. The federal law says that a congressional district has to be based upon a certain amount. It gives you a population base. In other words, if you have this many people in your state, you get this many seats in Congress. Each congressional district has to be drawn then to encompass that many people, or roughly within a margin of error. You're allowed a small margin of error because it's hard to draw. At that point, the ideal would be that you try to keep counties and communities as intact as possible. That's out the window. Then there's a thing called gerrymandering. Gerrymandering is a loose term that basically means that the party in charge, in this case, the Republicans, decides to redraw the lines and begin to move the boundaries in a way that favors their party. Everybody does this. I'm not saying I'm all about it. What I'm saying is everybody does this, and elections do have consequences. If you elect a majority of one party, that party is going to wind up being in charge of the voting on reapportionment. They're going to be able to move the train. They're going to be able to get the maps they want done because they have the majority. Elections have consequences because the other piece of this is federal law says X amount of people, but state law determines the process by which it's done. Typically, most states do it through the legislature. Alabama does, Texas does. California, being California, they have an electoral commission that does it. It's supposed to be a bipartisan, two-party commission. I don't know how, free of bias it really is, but they use a separate commission to do it. All right, so state law governs. That's why Texas has decided their state law doesn't say they can't do it more than once in a 10-year period. They thought, heck, let's do it again now. We're in charge. Why would we not? So they have now set about the process of redistricting, and the Democrats are having a complete come apart. The level of hypocrisy has been ludicrous. On top of that is the level of hilarity that I get in watching Democrats continue to thump themselves on the chest and puff up and strut around and use big talk because they ran away. House Democrats in Texas have literally fled the state to avoid making a quorum. So they're hiding out. Most of them are in Illinois, which is also ludicrous because Illinois is the most gerrymandered state in the nation. The hypocrisy, though, of these Democrats, they'll stand there and they'll go, we are taking the brave stand against Donald Trump and his minions and Greg Abbott's cabinet and the people of the Republican Party in Texas. We are taking the total brave stand to stop this and save democracy. You don't act brave by running away from your job. Just saying. Like, how about this? Do like the Alabama Democrats did when they saw the handwriting on the wall. Go back there and try to filibuster. Go back there and demand concessions. Go back there and hold up other bills. Go back there and use all the tactics that happens in the legislative process. By the way, running away is not one of them. That's called abdicating your responsibilities. Governor Abbott has called it abandonment of your post, which according to Texas Constitution could have them removed from office. This whole thing is dynamic. It's interesting. And the level of hypocrisy is huge. Now, let me flip the script over here to JP. I did not realize until just a few minutes ago that apparently they got a quorum in the Senate. Am I right?
They do. Yes.
In Texas Senate.
They do.
So what do you know?
So they actually just a couple of hours ago passed this new map in the Senate, 19-2. However, before I continue, I have to add that 9 Democrats in the Senate actually walked out when they brought this vote up. I'm putting up a quick video on there of so it wasn't enough Democrats to leave to actually break quorum, so they still held the vote and it passed. But I find it funny that they did that. They actually said that, quote, we stand in solidarity with our House Democrat brothers and sisters, says our options here to push back and fight in the Senate are pretty limited, so we're using every tool we have, which is walking out of the Senate chambers.
So here's what I know about that, by the way. Usually quorum is established when the first roll call is done.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, depending upon the type of bill, it can be a majority of those still present to vote.
Mm-hmm.
Quorum is established to be able to open the day of business.
Yeah.
I don't think you have to establish quorum for every vote.
Yeah.
And so they apparently got in the room, and I don't know how it worked, but in Alabama, what I could imagine would have happened is they got in the room, took the roll, and then some member of the Republican side went up and said, I'd like to call up a bill out of order, and they didn't see it coming. And when the bill got dropped, they were like, oh my God. And they ran out
away.
of the room. Run away.
Yeah. Yeah. So it passed the Senate earlier today, and now it goes on to the House.
Okay.
But obviously they don't have enough in the House to
make
quorum. But so I'm reading here on the Texas Tribune. Apparently Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and the House Speaker, they said that they would adjourn for the session if the lower chamber continued to lack a quorum on Friday. But then it said that Greg Abbott would then immediately call a second special session with the same agenda while possibly adding even more items in there. So I guess that's their strategy right now.
You know what's so awful here too is this special session that they're in was also designed to bring relief to flood-stricken areas in Texas.
It's.
And
I
they're
wonder
not even there to take care
the
of
amount of stuff not
constituents.
getting done because they're just not there.
Yeah.
So I wish they would just see the writing on the wall.
By the way, this map, if it passed, could have now one website is saying it adds 5 GOP seats, eliminates 5 Democrats. Understand that doesn't really happen until the vote takes place. The people vote. So Democrats have the opportunity to try and save some of those seats, but the lines have obviously been drawn to where it probably encompasses more Republican voting districts into certain places that groups them together in such a way. But if you look at the map, I'm looking at the map right now.
Yeah.
The blue in that state is hunkered down around a few small isolated areas.
I was just about to say that. So if you, I'm going to put the video against, the video has a map on it, but you can see, yeah, it's Houston, Austin, Dallas, El Paso. The rest is red. And it's tiny
it's Texas.
metropolitan cities that are blue, but the rest are red.
We have more blue than that in Alabama.
Yeah, and those little blues are Al Green, Jasmine Crockett. That's what they produce, those Democrats.
Well, Jasmine Crockett's having a complete freak out because this map also draws her out of her district.
Yeah. Go figure.
I think they have what? Do they have 37 House districts, I think, in Texas?
I believe something like that.
We have 7, and ours gives you a difference in the population base. But that's why, by the way, that's why other states have more representation in Congress, because they have a bigger population. So that's why, oh, by the way, New York and California both lost seats last time because their population shrank because people are running away from liberal policies. Texas grew. So listen, this whole thing's funny. Before we go to the break, I got to say one more thing that was really funny was Democrats, when they heard that Greg Abbott was talking about removing them from their offices, their response was a post, like a meme. It said, "Come and take it." Well, "come and take it" is a phrase, Molan Labe. It's a phrase from the Battle of Thermopylae when the Spartans stood in the gap against the Persian army. I got to say, that was a battle where they said, "come and take it," and then they stood.
Yep.
You don't get to use that phrase as a token of your running away.
Well, I also saw Jasmine Crockett's funny video of like, if I want to stay in the house, I'm going to stay in the house. Thank you. That's it. And
I
like,
feel like it.
it's like, that's not how it works, actually. But I guess you'll find out.
Pretty sure that the voters get a vote.
Yeah.
All right, we're taking a break. Coming right back. I got so much on this, but I'm not sure I'm going to get it all out. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I packed up all my stuff in my car and I drove to Colorado, and that was the biggest mistake of my life.
So mine wound up being the most impetuous good decision I ever made, because I got caught sneaking out of the house. So I was drinking and smoking starting in 4th grade.
Yeah.
And mine wasn't self-medicating, I don't think. And it wasn't a lot.
Yeah.
But it was there. And I was hanging out with a bunch of pot smokers. And mine was more along the lines of, you said I can't, so I'm gonna.
Yeah.
You said I can't, so this is what I'm gonna do.
Sure.
And it was just like that live on the edge kind of sense, 4th grade though.
Yeah.
I mean, who does that at 11 years old? But nonetheless, Mom caught me sneaking out of the house in 7th grade again, and gave me the ultimatum. What do you want to do here? You want to go live with your dad? And I just went, yeah. I mean, that was it. There was no thought. There was no preconceived, I've been looking for this opportunity. There was no, I think this is a good idea. It was just get back at Mom.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah. Just the opposite though. Mine wound up being the best decision I could have made. Totally impetuous.
Yeah.
But I did it. So you wind up in Colorado though, brother.
Yeah.
Colorado weren't good for you.
No, that's 2002. Go back to Colorado. Start, I was already about 3 weeks into my senior year in Kansas in my football season. So I uprooted and moved to Colorado, and then went to school sort of like I didn't hardly ever go to school. By the time I moved in with my mom, it was free reign. I could do whatever I want. But my brother was driving for a drug dealer. And so I would ride around with them and watch him. He'd have, stacks of cash. All the guys wanted to be him. All the girls wanted to be with him. Pounds of drugs, like what's not to love, like this is, kind of the thing I'm infatuated with. And here's this guy doing this. And so I kind of went to work for him selling a little bit of weed. And then I started getting into cocaine. Cocaine's expensive. In order to do cocaine, you have to sell cocaine. And I always say, when I tell my story, the same thing that makes me good at what I do for a living now, which is sales, networking, and persuasion, it's the same skill set I was using then, the exact same thing. And so I went in a very short amount of time from selling, little bits of marijuana to next thing you know, I'm selling cocaine, and next thing you know, I'm selling lots of cocaine. And in a period of 5 years, I racked up 6 felonies, and all of it was drug or stealing things to buy drugs or getting in a high-speed chase with the cops or whatever. But I, went from selling little bits of marijuana to the point where I was pushing large amounts of cocaine and methamphetamines for cartels in Colorado Springs.
That's before it was all legal out in Colorado.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Now they let you take over apartment complexes.
Yeah, exactly.
Just,
now you can just bring your gang and have at it.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So And going through getting ready to sit down with you today, and I've heard your story before,
Mm-hmm.
but I've never heard all of your story before.
Sure.
But you didn't just like go to prison. You were on the run for a while, and
Sure.
then they caught you swinging on a rope out the window trying to get away from a drug bust.
Yeah.
And I am of the understanding that at some point, Dog the Bounty Hunter was offered the opportunity to track you down, and he declined.
Yes, and I don't think he declined. I don't think he, based off of, well, so I'll just tell the story. That's
You
what
have
we
to
do.
now
That's
that
what we
I've
do.
asked
We have to
about
tell
it.
stories. Yeah. So here I am. I've now racked up 6 felonies. That 6th felony was the doozy. Okay. And the 6th felony was, I was already out on bond. I was already on probation, and I'd been up for 3 or 4 days. Found out one of these guys who had informed the cops about some legal activity that I was involved with. Found out that he had just come into some money, and he owed me money, and he also narked on me, right? And so in that world, you don't do that. Those are the rules, okay? You don't do that. If you want to play in this society, you don't do that. Now, a lot of people did, but there was an enforcement mechanism called me, okay? And if you're going to do that to me, I'm going to find you and I'm going to hurt you. That was the way it worked. And he wasn't the only one that I did that to, but he was the one that ended up telling the cops again. So I went to his house. I'd been up for 3 days, strung out on meth, pound on his door. He answers the door. I said, he's like, "Hey, man, what's going on?" I just immediately said, "Why'd you tell on me?" "And I didn't tell on you. I didn't tell on you." I walked into his house, pushed him. "Why'd you tell on me?" "I didn't tell on you." And I just started to beat him relentlessly. And the guy that I was with, so the way that it reads in the charges, and it's because they only wanted me to go down. They didn't care about the other guy that was with me. I was their target, okay, for the cops, law enforcement. I was the one running all these drug rings and theft rings and motorcycle theft rings and all this stuff. So they were after me, and I wasn't going to tell on the guy that was with me. But this is what actually happened versus what if you read the articles online and the charges and stuff. I was tasing him and beating him and tasing him with a taser and beating him, trying to get.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, don't forget, coming up after the next break, Congressman Barry Moore coming on to announce his run for the U.S. Senate. We'll talk to Congressman Moore here momentarily. In the meantime, let me do a little more on this gerrymandering thing. So I got 2 articles here, one from Politico and one from The Hill. I hold them in my calloused former paratrooper hands. Phil, did you go to Politico? I did. I go to these places so you don't have to. Politico is talking about how the Democrats are trying to separate their tactical use of redistricting from that of the Republicans. What does that mean? Nothing. It means they do it too, but they don't want you to talk about that. It's their tactical use. They use it tactically. What? All right, this Politico, right? But this whole article quotes Governor J.B. Pritzker, the extremely partisan Democrat governor of Illinois, and former U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder. I mean, my gosh, could you find 2 more partisan individuals to comment on this? They're claiming that the Texas legislature is trying to cheat mid-decade. Oh, so you can cheat when it's not mid-decade. That's what they're trying to say. Well, they're cheating at the wrong time.
Yeah. We're supposed to cheat at that time. You can't cheat before we can cheat.
Cheating is done at the first of the decade, not later. Anyway, pushing a rare mid-decade redraw of the Texas legislative maps. They never say this is illegal. Have you noticed that? They never say you can't do it. They just say you shouldn't. This is bad form. Bad form.
It's a taste of their own medicine.
That's exactly what it is. Republicans say their calls are hypocritical. Governor Greg Abbott pointed out, most of these that are complaining in other states, they have no capability to do anything. This whole thing about a gerrymandering war. Now California's going to do it. Now New York's going to do it. Well, he points out they've already gerrymandered their states so much they don't have any Republican members in Congress anyway. It's a joke. Okay. Having said that, let's take a look at some of that. How about The Hill? New York Governor Kathy Hochul declared the move by Texas Republicans was a legal insurrection of our U.S. Capitol. Others repeated the Democratic mantra that it was the death of democracy. Even President Barack Obama chimed in. who said nothing, it points out, nothing, when his own state of Illinois was completely gerrymandered, which is where J.B. Pritzker is now. J.B. Pritzker bellowed that gerrymandering was an attempt to steal congressional seats. Never mind that Illinois is the most gerrymandered state in the country. The redistricting, if you look at their lines, it's unreal. It looks like spider webs. They don't draw like whole communities together. They run lines down the interstate to get to the next place where there's more Democrats voting. It's unreal. But the redistricting law signed by Pritzker left Republicans with only 3 of the state's 17 congressional seats. 3, even though Democrats and Republicans nearly split the vote for the presidential race most recently. What does that tell you? If you've got that many voting Republicans and they only have 3 congressional seats, don't sit there and talk to us about gerrymandering. How about this? Let's go to, I don't know, Massachusetts. Governor Maura Healey pledged to retaliate by gerrymandering her heavily Democrat state. The problem? It's already so badly gerrymandered, there's no Republican House members in the state anyway. Haven't been since the 1990s. How about California Governor Gavin Newsom? Always good for a laugh. He quickly pledged to order a new round of gerrymandering in a state where Republicans constitute roughly 40% of the congressional vote in 2024, but only got 17% of the seats. Think about that. 40% of the vote, only 17% of the seats. In order for him to do this, they would have to spend more than $200 million to have a special ballot proposition to change the Constitution because California law currently doesn't allow it. Just saying. Then there's James Carville. Oh, yes, the mouth of the South. Is that guy still alive? It's like Yoda talking to us.
Barely.
If Yoda got angry and had roid rage and did a podcast, it would be James Carville.
That's pretty much it. That's spot on.
Oh, an angry Democrat he is. Carville insisted that once the Democrats retake power, they should, quote, unilaterally add Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia as states and then pack the Supreme Court to guarantee Republicans never win again. Is he listening to himself? Is he hearing what he's saying? I'm mad at the Republicans for doing something their law allows in Texas. So what we should do is we should try to unilaterally make 2 more states that we think will be Democrat and then pack the Supreme Court so they can never get in their way again. Like, okay, let's say I see something wrong, and so I advocate for 3 more wrongs because that definitely makes things right.
Of course.
Yeah, doing it to save democracy, he says. Now, I got to tell you, as we head to the break, and I'll wrap this up, right here in Alabama, it makes you wonder. So State Senator Arthur Orr, one of the leaders in the Alabama Senate that I served with when I was down there, great guy. And he said most recently when he was asked on Dale Jackson's show, did he think that could ever happen in Alabama? And he said, absolutely. He said, we made us redraw the maps. And all of a sudden you'll have Shamari Figures and Terry Sewell gone. Paraphrasing slightly, but that's pretty much what he said. He said, politics reign. You've seen these districts, Dale. They're talking about Illinois and other Democrat blue states. It makes no sense the way they draw their districts. But that's the thing. Elections have consequences. Speaking of elections, coming up next, Congressman Barry Moore is running for the U.S. Senate. We'll have more. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
That he told on me. Well, the guy that was with me had a blackjack, which is like it's not makeshift. Like you can buy them. Yeah. It's got like a mechanical spring inside of it with a heavy piece of lead with leather wrapped around it. Yeah. And he hit him square in the forehead with it. Boom, his head explodes. Blood goes everywhere. Was not the intention of that visit, okay? My intention, I actually was friends with the guy and liked the guy, but he had broken the rules. And so I was in there to make sure that he understood that you don't do this. The guy I was with cracked his head open. Blood went everywhere. And I'm like, well, at this point, we're done, okay? Like, this is over. And after he got hit in the head with that, he admitted that he told on me. That happened, but that, again, that was not the... It was not the intention of this meeting was to go that serious and that far, but it did. And once it did, I just started grabbing computers and anything that was of value. I told his brother, I said, look, if you guys don't pay us, pay me the money that you owe me, I'm going to be back and that's going to be you. And I walked out. And so they hit me with attempted murder, aggravated robbery, and extortion. That night I got arrested again.
That's go away charges right there.
Those are go away charges. Yeah. For a long time. And it was my 6th felony. Right. So my 6th time I've been arrested and charged in separate cases. And so I got arrested that night. I went to court basically, and they dropped the attempted murder down to first degree because it didn't fit. And so my arraignment, I don't know what they call it. You're a lawyer. I'm not. Although after being in prison for a little while, you actually kind of turn into one. But they dropped it to first degree assault. And so I was charged with first degree assault, aggravated robbery, and extortion, and a slew of other things. But those were the heaters. And so I'm in there for 2 weeks, and I get bonded out again. And so now I'm out on several $100,000. No, I think it was like $135,000 worth of bonds, if I remember correctly.
Who posted bond?
There's so many rabbit trails I could go all the way down. I just don't know how interesting they are. There's this girl, I think her name was Lisa, that she was just infatuated with me and thought the world of me. And she went and used a credit card to buy a bunch of Xbox 360s that were out at the time, and then sold them and got the money to bond me out.
No kidding.
No one's ever got that story, Phil. You're the first that got that story. That asked that question. There you go. But yeah, I ended up bonding out, and knew immediately that if I go to court, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. So I'm not going to court, which now makes me a fugitive because I missed my court date. Right? I'm on the run. And the plan was, I had a friend, Spider. He and I were supposed to, and Spider's a very bad dude, like very, very bad, Hispanic guy who's part of the Sereno gang. And we were supposed to go down to California with his people and then go into Mexico. That's what they do on the movies. We felt like it was a good idea. Only problem is we never got around to doing it. And so I ended up on a number of occasions, the cops ended up finding where I was, but they didn't have a warrant and they weren't sure. And so there's a couple different ways that I was able to get away when I was on the run.
Yeah.
And that infuriated them. Okay.
This is how long? Like several weeks?
Yeah, it was about 2 or 3 weeks. Yep. And so you had, at the time, there was Officer Mork and Officer Goldbranson, which were with Colorado Springs Police Department. But then you had Sergeant O'Driscoll, who was the head of the Fugitive Task Force and Crime Prevention Unit.
You still remember their names?
Yes, I do. And there's a story in that
this?
too. This would have been 2007.
Wow.
Yeah, and so Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, not only was he on the Fugitive Task Force, he was part of the Crime Prevention Unit. So even before I was a fugitive, both Mork and Goldbranson and Sergeant O'Driscoll and his team, they were dedicated to bringing me in and taking me down. Okay. Because of, the threat that I posed in running these crime rings or whatever. And, but the Crime Prevention Unit and Fugitive Task Force, it was ran by Sergeant O'Driscoll. They ended up, they have like unlimited budget, work with the feds, all this other stuff. And so they were on me. And so I got away a couple times, and finally June 19th, 2007, I am in what we deemed my safe house, and Spider had given me a nylon rappelling rope to tie to the bottom of this 70s retro recliner. And he's like, if you got to get out, you go, because the front door is, there's a hallway in these apartments, and then you go from the hallway into the apartment, and the only way out would be down the window, out the window and down on the ground, and it's third story. And I'm like, I'm never going to use that. That's crazy, but I did. Every 18 inches, I tied a double knot, so I could climb like that. And, I woke up June 19th, 2007, not thinking anything, just another day of being on the run. And
Just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This one, goes from like Huntsville back on over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back on over to Gadsden. All the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we now call once again, Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And by the way, there's all you guys out there that live stream the show every day. You're all over the world. We know it. You're also podcasters who catch sometimes after the fact. Anyway, the bottom line is wherever you guys catching this show, we can see it. We know it. And you're the only reason why we do it. We make this show just for y'all. And the fact that you participate with us means the world. Well, listen, I don't want to take up too much time. I want to go to the phones right now. So you heard me mention earlier the race for the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Tommy Tuberville has really turned into quite a race with some great names. One of those great names has got in today. Listen, Alabama Representative Barry Moore currently serves in Alabama's 1st congressional district. Previously, I believe it was the 2nd congressional district until the court decided they had to redraw our lines, which has always been fun. But he serves quite ably. He has become known as a conservative voice in D.C. on behalf of the people of Alabama. He's been a member of the Freedom Caucus. He's one of the very first to ever come out in support of Trump when he ran for office. He's a graduate of Auburn University. He's got an amazing wife and kids and grandkids, and he's on the phone right now. Congressman Barry Moore, how are you doing?
I am doing fine, my friend Phil Williams. How are you, sir?
I'm good. You need to take me on the road because that was a heck of an introduction right there.
Man, I tell you what, Williams, you're improving. I mean, really, really improving. I was so impressed with that. I was like, man, he sounds like a rapper on the other end out there laying out the reach and all that. You're doing a good job, brother. Doing a good job.
Well, thanks, man. Well, listen, we're not here to talk about me, here to talk about you, dude. You've made a name for yourself in Congress, and I'll just go ahead and confess that I said off the air to you a minute ago on the phone that I love your voting record in Congress. The only problem with you running for Senate is I lose your vote in Congress. I just hope that we're going to get somebody else in there just as conservative to take your place.
Yes, I mean, that's always a concern. But for me, I just look for what that calling is on my life. And so for us, when the opportunity opened with the Senate seat, and if you look at mine and Coach's record, we're two top conservatives in the country. And honestly, I razz Coach a little because my Liberty score is like 4/10 higher than his, you know. And so it's just one of those things where, you know, he's a conservative and he's done a great job, and those are big shoes to fill. But when I feel called sometime, and it's not always, you know, it's just Psalms 119:105 says, "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet." And you know, in the Bible, those old lamps didn't give a lot of light, brother. It's not like a high beam, but we just take that next step of faith. And we felt called to do this. And it's like that August 21st day, 10 years ago this month, when Donald Trump came to Alabama, and Heather and I were in a van on the south end of Loud People Stadium. And those guys were like, "Well, y'all endorse Trump." Well, Heather and I, we went down the hall and prayed about it. And literally, Phil, we walked out on the stage and introduced, there were only 4 people out of all the legislative guys there and elected officials that day that would endorse Trump. But we felt that was our calling. And I became the first guy in the nation to endorse a guy who had less than 1% chance to get the nomination. There was a 17-way primary. Donald Trump was certainly an outsider, and they said he can't beat Hillary Clinton. That was the conventional wisdom. But we felt led that day to get involved in that. And so we've been in the fight ever since. And we've got a fight to finish, and hopefully we'll continue in the Senate to serve the American people and move the president's agenda down to the finish line.
Well, that's good stuff, man. And I do remember those days. And let me ask you something. I asked another candidate in your race recently. I said, just from my limited time serving in public office, I know that this has to be, if it's to be done well, this has to be a decision where the husband and wife are both in it. You might be the name on the sign, but Heather's going to have to go, you know, be a part of it with you in every respect. So talk to me about the decision-making process between the two of you for you to run for U.S. Senate.
Yeah, there is no doubt. And you and I both know that we both outkicked our covers when we married our wives. And for me, Heather was politically astute even growing up. And so we pray about these things, you know, and it's not an easy decision because we love the congressional districts. We've served just about every county south of Montgomery in Alabama, and we've served well, but it is a team effort. She travels with me. She gives tours free to the taxpayer in Washington, D.C. I tell everybody it's free to the taxpayer, but it costs me more than you'll ever know. But she is engaged in the process, and she loves our country. She loves our president, and she loves the fact that we can make a difference in the future for our kids and grandkids. And so we're a great team, and we had to pray seriously about it, but there was no doubt that the Lord, I am exactly on the assignment that he gave me. I don't know what that looks like down the road, but that lamp unto my feet, my brother, it's that next step. And so we're just doing what we feel called and led to do. And, you know, that's all you can do in this life, because at the end of the day, this is a vapor. And when we step into eternity, you want the Father to look at us and go, "Well done, thy good and faithful servant." And so we're going to be those good and faithful servants.
Well, and I love hearing that. And thank you very much. And by the way, ain't nothing wrong with taking your faith into politics, because if it's the core of your life, then it has to go with you or it's not real. So I appreciate you saying those things. So let me ask you, a poll came out the other day. I don't remember who did the poll. I think 1819 quoted it. But this poll had you polling pretty well before you were ever even in the race. So talk to me about where you see the race going. What is the next step? Like right now, I know today was the announcement day. You probably haven't had a time to do a kickoff party yet, but today's the announcement day. And what is the next step for you to hit 67 counties? Because you're a hard campaigner, dude. I mean, but that was in, you know, the Wiregrass and in the southern districts. Now you got a whole state. So what are you looking at?
Yeah, so I actually talked to a senator friend of mine, and And he's retired, but he told me, he said, look, when I first announced for the Senate, when I was in the House, he said only 7% of the people knew my name in the whole state. And he said I was concerned, and my team was like, no, sir, that's not good. We'll define who you are. And so for us now to begin to move north and define who we are, that conservative record, the first in the nation to endorse Trump, the most conservative member from the Alabama delegation, and all that, a House Freedom Caucus member, a guy I was rated one of the most conservatives in the state legislature. And so when you start putting that message out, Alabama loves Donald Trump, my friend. And we were with him before the political wind shifted for him. We've been behind him to support him. And so as you talk about loyalty to the president and moving that America First agenda, the people need to know that who we send to the Senate is the man who the president can trust and does trust. And so I think we just run on our record. And, that's what we've always done, Phil. I've always said I don't want to ever destroy my witness over winning a political race. So what we do is we run on our record. We don't talk about other folks. We go out and talk about what we're going to do and what we've done. And I was elected to Congress in 2020, and that's perfect vision, right? So I just tell people, look at what we've done since we've been there and what we're going to continue to do. And so it's just a matter of messaging. And listen, Friday night, I know you got a big reach. We're going to have a launch party in DeKalb County, North Alabama, a little town called Sylvania at Barnes Blue Pond. We're going to have some good music there. Matter of fact, President Trump's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, will be there. Brian Hollyhand will be there with us. A number of special guests as we launch Friday night in North Alabama. So that's the next step, just getting out there and getting in front of the people. And like you said, we work so very hard, and we're such a good grassroots team, Heather and I and our family and the folks we've got around us that volunteer to help. That's the next step, just letting people know who Barry Moore is so they have a clear choice when the election comes in the primary.
Well, I will personally be at CNN again Friday night in New York, but otherwise I would love to have come. But you got some good names there. Mark Meadows and Brylan Hollyhand are two people who I have great respect for, and they represent two different generations, I would call them, in the Republican Party. And that's a big deal. Speaking of which, let me ask you about that. Do you see your message resonating with every age demographic? I mean, how do you participate in the election process that big when you've got age groups that have different viewpoints?
Well, to me, if you look at just the young people in this country, how they're coming back to their faith. Brylan Hollyhand said it on Fox, I guess, this week, about that you got to be willing to talk about your faith and those things that spans generations. And so I think that, and they love President Trump. They love the fact that he's including the young people. He had an incredible reach to the young people across the country this time around by the Charlie Kirks of the world, those people who are getting out there on those college campuses and engaging them and kind of countering the culture of the woke left they've been taught. I just think there's an opportunity. And Heather and I taught you Sunday school for years. We've always kind of enjoyed young people. We do a ton of interns. So that's really not out of our wheelhouse in a lot of ways. I'm getting a little older, but I still love those young folks, and we appreciate conservatives and young people who are willing to engage in the process. We need that for the next generation in this nation.
No, we absolutely do. We need to know we have leaders ready and fit to take the fight. All right, let me ask you, brother. So you've got some great time under your belt serving in Congress, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you served on, or you're still serving on, House Agriculture and House Judiciary. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, sir. You're correct.
So if you were on Ag and Judiciary in the House, is that something you'd like to repeat in similar type committees in the Senate, or do you have your eyes set on something you'd love to be a part of that you haven't been able to do in the House so far?
Yeah, I think for us, I have to look at Katie Britt, Senator Britt, and the position she's going to be in, and make sure I complement what Senator Tubble might be vacating in the Senate. So he is on Senate Armed Services Committee,
Yeah.
Me being a veteran, understanding growing up with Fort Rucker there and how important the defense industry is to our state and certainly to our country, but also ag, because that is one of the things. We have a huge rural ag producing state. It's a huge economic engine. So I see those two areas are the areas to focus, and then whatever other areas I can feel the best benefit the state, that's what we're going to go for.
Well, I think that's wise, and I think that Armed Services and Ag are both. I mean, that's between Maxwell Air Force Base, Fort Rucker, Fort and Redstone Arsenal, Anderson Army Depot, and all the National Guard presence. I mean, that Armed Services piece is going to be huge for us, and then Space Command, all those things that we got to try and move back to our state. All right, man. Well, listen, you've had plenty of time to think and postulate and get this going, but I know you've got what I would call platform pieces, and I've heard some of it. Obviously, you can tout your relationship with Trump, and you can tout your time running on your record. but is there a particular platform, something you're going to stand on that says Barry Moore is staking the flag right here? What would that be if it is?
Yeah, I think for me, and there's probably a couple of those, it'd be hard for me to hit them all, but continuing to support the president securing our border and making sure that we have a secure border, making sure that we only got Americans voting in our elections. I think election integrity is huge for this nation going forward. And so a couple of things and the economy field, when you and I served together in the state legislature, Airbus, Austal, all those companies, Polaris, you just name them, that came to Alabama. I think opening the state of Alabama for business, because you and I both know there is no government program like a job. And so if we can allow people to come to work in Alabama, and we can workforce develop and train the labor force to build, Alabama has land, labor, and climate conducive to growing an economy. So making sure I focus on growing the economy and securing our borders, those sort of things that really, I think the number one issue, though, Phil, is to protect your liberty. If I just take everything off the table and say, what is my number one job, is to protect your liberty as a citizen of this country.
Well, I can't argue with any of that. Like I said, the only thing that I think that we're losing here is a potential losing your conservative vote in the House. So let me ask you this real quick before we go. I'm sure you spoke to House leadership and said, hey, I'm throwing my name in the hat for the Senate. What kind of commentary did you get from members of your caucus, or for that matter, Speaker Johnson?
Yeah, so my buddy Jim Jordan's like, man, you're going to miss us in the House. I'm like, yeah, I know, Jim. And we are dear friends. And so there is that little bit of pushback, but they're encouraging me because we've become friends, and they know that in that Senate, you've got only 100 people there. And certainly they would love to have allies. The House Freedom Caucus would love to have more allies in the Senate. And very often we'll have senators come to our HFC meetings up in D.C. So, those guys are encouraging me to do it. They hate to see me go, but at the same time, we're always going to be in touch with our friends across there and bridge the gap between the two chambers to make sure we're moving a good conservative pro-Trump agenda forward.
Well, Congressman Barry Moore from the 1st District of Alabama, now running for the U.S. Senate. A lot of time between now and the primary, but it's also going to fly by. So best of luck to you, my friend. We'll have you back on again sometime soon. And thanks for making time today.
Hey, thank you, Phil. We appreciate your service.
All right. Tell Heather, hey, thank you. All right, man. That's it. That's Congressman Barry Moore. So listen, you guys out there, you've got a deep bench to pull from. Wow. I mean, think about this. You got a member of the House Freedom Caucus who's been in Congress now for a few years, but he's a businessman who knows what it means to write a paycheck and to balance a budget and to make hard decisions. And then you've also got the guy who's been a prosecutor, putting bad guys away for years, who's been serving as our attorney general, who was the chairman of the Republican Attorneys General Association nationally, and has been leading the fight against wokeness in a big way for our state and our nation. That's Steve Marshall. And then you've also got a former Navy SEAL who now fights human trafficking, who has a great record of law enforcement, and all three of them love the Lord. I'm going to tell you right now, you Alabama voters have got your work cut out for you, but you're going to have time. We're on this show. We're going to develop these candidates as best we can and give you everything you need to know, because everybody in the sound of my voice in the state of Alabama is going to have those three names on their ballot. I love having choices. They're also hard choices, but I love having choices. All right, we're taking a break right now. We'll take that break. We'll come right back. Going to jump on into number 2 on the Triple Dipper. I got what I call a dim view of the Dems views. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back.
I was in my living room.
One of your interviews, you said you woke up at 3 p.m.
Yeah, it was that afternoon. And it was that afternoon. I was again smoking weed, doing drugs, and your circadian rhythm gets a little off in that situation. And so, woke up that afternoon. It was the weird thing that you remember. I was cooking bratwurst and watching the Chappelle Show, and I looked out the window. And the way that it's set up, there's an apartment building here. And every year I go to Colorado Springs and I take my family. And this year I took my 15-year-old son, and he's heard me tell this story a million times. And I'm like, here's the bill. He's like, this just like the building you said. I said, yeah, no, it's because it's where it happened. Okay, like I'm telling you. And we go and we look, and there's an apartment building right here. This is the apartment building I'm in. And I saw the front end of a cop car sticking out. And I knew, okay, they're here. They're here. And so I kind of frantically, I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? Well, then all of a sudden I hear, boom, boom, boom. Colorado Springs police open up. They kick in the door. And I look, it wasn't my door. So I said, they don't know which apartment I'm in. They're kicking in every single door in the apartment on the 3rd floor, All they knew was I was on the 3rd floor. And so you've been in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're clearing rooms as though this was Afghanistan trying to find me. Okay. In an apartment complex.
Yeah.
Boom. Okay. I'm like, okay, well, I look at the rope and this is my only option. And so I kick the screen out, throw my backpack out with all my stuff. And the only piece of furniture in the whole place was the TV and the retro recliner. Okay. That was it. And so I wrap the rope around my hand and I jump, boom. And it sticks exactly how it's supposed to. It's, wedged in the window, and I'm hanging there. Well, what I didn't know in that back parking lot, there was a surveillance van.
Oh yeah.
That blends in with the rest of it. You wouldn't have known it was a cop car or whatever. It was a surveillance van. And they called it in. Someone's trying to jump out the window. I think we got our guy, and then 50 or 60 cops. They weren't going to miss me again. Come swarming from the outside. Like you couldn't see them because they were right here.
So the jig was up at that point.
The jig was up. Yeah, the gun's drawn. Get on the ground, as though I had another option. Gravity necessitated that down was the direction I was going to go, and so I unwrapped my hand, fell, and hit the ground. Thankfully, didn't break anything. They put their knee in my back, cuffed me, put me in the back of the cop car, and that was it. June 19th, 2007.
So I'm fascinated by two things in the story.
Sure.
One is you still remember the cops' names.
There's a story for why, but go ahead.
Well, and then I may get back to that story.
Yeah.
But the other is you take your kids and you show them exactly where this happened.
Yeah.
So we're going to get a lot into, you're obviously a different person today.
Sure.
I know the guy who did those things, but I don't know the guy who did those things
Sure.
because you're a different person. But that being said, you're pretty transparent with, and you have 7 kids, by the way.
Yeah.
You're a prolific breeder,
Yes.
but nonetheless, you've got a beautiful family, 7 kids, but you're telling them what's happened in your life.
Mm-hmm.
What's can I ask you real quick? What's their response when they hear about Dad before they knew Dad?
This is a great, it's a great platform to share the gospel with your kids, right? But the older ones, it's a warning. Proverbs talks about the fool. Dad was a fool, right? I was the epitome of the fool, and in Proverbs and really throughout the scriptures, it talks about a fool. And I didn't seek wise counsel. I didn't receive instruction. I didn't receive discipline. I didn't any of those things. I rejected all of it, and this is where I ended up. And so I don't think it's set. So I've got a 15-year-old, got a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. Okay. The 15-year-old, the 10-year-old, the 9-year-old are the ones that really wrap their minds around what I'm talking about when I talk about being in prison and, cops chasing me and that kind of stuff. The rest of the ones are younger and they're just like, wow, Dad, you used to be bad, but now you're good. Like they don't have any, but it will eventually form like their understanding. And it's something that I want them to always know. And the thing I always point them to is like, 1, don't be the fool, receive instruction, receive wise counsel, obey God and obey your parents. But also life isn't perfect. And if you stray, you can never stray so far that God can't get you. Right. And if God saved me, he can save anybody. And that's not cliche. It's literally, let me tell you about something. But again, specifically my 15-year-old, I drive him all around Colorado Springs. There's not a corner I didn't commit a felony in that city. Okay. And I drive him and I'm like, I did this here. I did this here. I did this here. I did this here. Like, this is who I was. You need to know and understand that, right? And so,
Proverbs 19, raise up a child the way they should go.
Yep.
When they get old, they won't depart from it.
Yep.
All right, brother. So you, the jig was up. They got you. The officers whose names you still recall were a part of the task force that brought you in, and you're staring at 6 felonies prior before you even got this. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just pulling pins on truth grenades. That's what we're doing. I got a bunch of text messages. So before I jump into the next dipper, I'll go ahead and just hit a few of those. Matt and Madison just texted in. Matt and Madison says, do you find it offensive when you hear liberals using the phrase, quote, going to war in regard to gerrymandering, considering you and your family's history? Well, First of all, Matt, thank you for acknowledging the fact that my family is filled with veterans. Thank you, Etch. I appreciate it. Do I get offended when I hear liberals use the phrase "going to war"? Not really. First of all, I recognize rhetoric when I see it and hear it. Oftentimes, I will tell you that, I mean, every day when I leave the show, one of the things I tell people is stay in the fight. I'm not asking them to go out and swing a punch at anybody. So sometimes words are just, bandied about to give emphasis to but I do think they overplay it. The whole thing about civil war, like we're going to play in a minute, a clip from Maxine Waters saying that Trump's trying to get us into a civil war. That's a whole different deal. That's ridiculous. I will tell you, though, that like sometimes I do find it offensive. I was actually in a lawsuit with another attorney who didn't like my position. And his response was, I think you're just on some kind of a moral jihad. Well, it pissed me off. And I got in his face and I said, moral jihad? I said, just so you know, as somebody who's been shot at by real jihadis, I take issue with your loose use of the term. You need to find a new lexicon. And I left the room for a few minutes. Dave from Capshaw. By the way, Matt, thanks for the question. Dave from Capshaw says, to me, James Carville is more like Gollum than Yoda. It loves the precious.
No, I'm just going to see Gollum whenever I see him.
You know what, though? That's fitting. Have you seen, you know what you ought to do, JP, in a minute, tell me when you got it. We ought to have a picture side by side on the screen with Gollum and James Carville.
I will work on it.
Okay. Good stuff, Dave from Capshaw. Randy from Madison, Alabama says, Phil, alien spacecraft will be here by Thanksgiving, so none of this matters. Randy, you know something we don't know?
Have you seen that story?
No.
There's actually
what?
There's something coming towards the Earth, and it's projected to be here around later this year. And there's one professor at Harvard.
What are we talking about?
There's one professor at Harvard who's claiming that this is a alien spacecraft. So
is this like something from the Daily Mail or from the National Enquirer?
This is actually a professor, Ari something. I can't remember his last name, but yeah, he well, there's something coming. 99% of professors or scientists thinks it's just an asteroid, but he's convinced it's a spacecraft and thinks it's going to be here by December, sometime around then.
Huh.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of it, but yeah, that's out there. Also, I do have a
time to stock up on beans and bullets is what I said.
I also found it. Somebody actually already did a side by side.
A side by side? Are you putting up on the screen?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
It's quite compelling.
Is this Gollum and James Carville?
This is Gollum and James Carville.
Oh my gosh. That is that's angry Gollum, by the way.
It's a bit disturbing, I would say that.
It's when the fat hobbits it wants our precious. Oh, and on that note, we're going to take a break, and then we'll come back and get a few more text messages and jump on into Dipper number 2, which I haven't even gotten to Dipper number 2 yet. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. You never know what you're going to get on this show. Now you've got this stack of felonies, and you're looking at 384 years potentially.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're looking at life in prison at that point.
Correct. Yeah.
But you negotiated.
Yeah.
Did you negotiate for yourself, or did your lawyer do a good job?
It was a mix, but there's a bunch between that. But yeah, it gets into mediation. But there was 9 months between then, and in those 9 months, they take me to county jail. I'm facing 384 years in prison. At least that's how my public defender described it, because how it works, and the numbers are shaky in my head, but I have to do the math. But either way, each charge that I was charged with gets doubled because I was on probation and on bond, so they can double it, so they enhance it.
Yeah.
And then they times it. They can times it by 4 because it's the habitual criminal.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can break it all down with math or whatever, but the habitual criminal. So if you have 3 felonies, they call that. I'm not going to say what they call it. It's the B word, the little B word. And if it's 4 or more, they quadruple your sentence. And they call that the big B word. Okay, habitual. Anyway, so I was at 6, so I'm times 4, and then so they stack, and then they times it by 4, and then that's where that comes from.
This is state, not federal, right?
State, Colorado State. Yep, Colorado State prison.
It didn't wind up being 384 years, but you still got a pretty stiff sentence.
Got a pretty stiff sentence, and the transformation really began in county jail. So I was in county jail for 9 months, basically holding out and that's part of your negotiations in county jails. Like, well, I'll just sit here until you bring me a deal that I want, right? And they'll only do that for so long. But it is, some people just want to get in there and they plea and they go to prison, but I was going to, bide my time or whatever. Well, I'm now in county jail thinking I'm going to go do the rest of my life in prison. That's how I'm seeing this. And so I'm in there thinking I have to create this reputation of being a bad dude, so when I get to prison, people won't mess with me. And so I do, and I'm hanging out with all the wrong people in there. I catch one assault case. They put me in the hole, then send me to another unit. I'm there for a little bit. They bring in another guy that had told on one of my friends. And I had to go beat him up really, really bad. Caught another assault case. So I caught 2 assault cases in county jail. So on top of all my other stuff, I caught 2 more assault cases. They were misdemeanor assaults, but they're still assault cases. And they put me in administrative segregation after that. So they're like, okay, you don't play nice with others.
That's solitary, basically.
Solitary,
right?
Correct. Exactly what it is. Yep. Solitary confinement. You're in a cell by yourself for 23 hours a day. You get an hour out to make a phone call and take a shower, maybe do some push-ups or whatever, and you go back to your cell. That's what you get. And I was in there for about 4 months. Okay. And, so it was 9 months total, 5 months out, 4 months in ADSEG or solitary. And in that stay in solitary, God began to open my eyes. I don't believe he saved me yet, but he opened my eyes to the fact that it was my fault that I was in there. And this is huge. I was just reading a Rick Burgess's new book last night because I'm going to interview him later today. But it like that was one of the chapters when it talks about just rugged accountability. Like you have to take accountability for your actions if you're ever going to repent. And this was the beginning of me realizing, because up to that point, I blame my mom for my circumstances. I blame my dad. I blame the judge. I blame the cops. Da 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 da.
No more victim.
Exactly. And but what was wild though, I really believed I was a victim. Like I wasn't just saying that to get out of trouble. I really believed it, which is weird. But God, in his mercy, opened my eyes like, no, dummy, this is your fault. Sure, does your mom and your dad play a role? And oh, yeah. But your choices got you here. They didn't beat that guy up. They didn't jump out the window. They didn't, sell drugs. They didn't do those things. You did those things. Yeah. And so when I realized that my bad choices created the bad circumstances, that was extremely liberating, because what it meant is that I was free to make good choices that would then create good circumstances. And it was like this epiphany that went off in my brain. And so as much as you can in a cell by yourself, I began to start taking ownership of my thoughts, feelings, behaviors, decisions, all that kind of stuff. So much so that my family really began to because I would have a phone call a week. That's all they would give me. Not that I could call them every day on my hour out if I wanted, but my family would pick up the phone once a week. They'd cut me off. I'd burned every bridge.
Wow.
And in those weekly phone calls, my family started to notice a huge change in my attitude.
Who'd you call?
My grandma Barb.
Okay.
Yep. And I would call my grandma Barb, and usually it would be on Sunday night, and my mom would be over there, and my brother would be over there, and and so they'd pass the phone around or whatever, and I'd talk. But they specifically, my grandma Barb is like, something's changed in him, and everyone, and a lot of people in the family told grandma she was crazy. You just got a soft spot for Brian, whatever. But she's like, no, I feel like something's changed. And
is that your dad's mom or your mom's mom?
That's my mom's mom.
Okay.
Yep. Meanwhile, my dad's mom, the one that was teaching Sunday school for Miss K, Scott Beeson, when he interviewed me, said, who was praying for you? It was a good question. I said, well, Betty Dawson was. And lots of credit goes to her for that. But Grandma Barb, she began to really believe in me and believe that there was a change that had happened, so much so that she, so in this time period, that 4 months I'm in there, I guess about 3 months into my ADSEG stay, my public defender came and said, okay, Brian, the district attorney, she was like really excited to give me this deal like it was a good one.
Your attorney was?
Yes, public pretender. And she comes and says, Brian, this is great. If you sign this deal, you're only going to get 32 years with a crime of violence. And I'm like, amazing. When you're 23, 384 and 32, there's not a lot of difference, right? And so I was not real excited about that. So I called my grandma and I said, I'm going to prison for the rest of my life. Because the way it works in Colorado, it's way different than it is in Alabama. On a 32-year sentence with a crime and violence sentence enhancer, which is another way that you have a crime of violence. So they stack your sentences, then they aggravate it, and then they multiply it. So it's basically they're just going to throw everything they can at you. If you go to trial, and she explains this to me, if you go to trial, this is what they can do to you. But I tell my grandma I'm going to prison for the rest of my life, and she reaches out to these attorneys. She's got a little bit of money. She hasn't got a lot of money. She's just reaching out to these attorneys. They're like 60 grand, 120 grand, 150 grand to represent. You know, he's got 6 felonies.
I'm underbilling myself apparently as an attorney.
Yes. Well, if you get into criminal law and you got a guy with 6 felonies, you should probably charge him. But they're like, you know, and she's like, well, I can't afford any of that. And I said, go talk to Jeff Barker. Jeff Barker's got a great reputation for being kind of an up and coming new lawyer who's just really, really good. And she goes and sits down with him, and he's like, look, best I can do is $10,000. And if he goes to trial, I need another 10. My grandma says, I don't have another 10. He's like, well, he ain't going to trial, so I'm not that worried about it. Right. So he's like, okay, $10,000.
Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a Taco Tuesday. Hour number 3. The first 2 hours flew by. I swear they did. I got more text messages, and some of them are like really good. I gotta jump in here and get a few more of these. You guys are amazing. So, by the way, one of my favorite things about this show is audience participation. Just so you know, you want to text in, the number is 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. That's the number. David at Bucky's. What did he send? Oh, it's another meme about Gollum and
Yeah. So I saw that one in there too. So we're not the first to come up with this.
Yeah, Gollum and James Carville side by side making a cringe face, and it says Gollum. He went to CNN after Lord of the Rings. Marshall from Dubai checking in sends me a meme. What is that? Oh, it's got James Carville with Yoda looking over his shoulder going, why so angry, Jimmy? Is it because your football team is no good? He's an LSU fan,
Yes,
isn't he?
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
He's a big LSU fan. What else we got here? Larry's Vindicator says, Phil, my mama always said conservative talk radio is like a box of chocolates. Okay.
Never know what you're gonna get.
Never know what you're going to get. That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you very much. What else we got here? Joe in Tennessee. Joe in Tennessee says one of the guys on Red Eye Radio lives in the edge of Crockett's district, Jasmine Crockett. He said the Lions were running kind of weird. The liberals are intellectually and morally deficient. Glad that things are going to the right, all caps. Joe C. in Tennessee. Yeah, I agree with you, man. Listen, that's the funny thing is part of that liberal hypocrisy on gerrymandering is that some of these places where they are screaming are places that were gerrymandered to their benefit before already. It's unbelievable. Tom with all the kids in Huntsville again, checking in. Tom with all the kids says, that's why you need more families like mine. I guess to have more voters. Is that what he's saying? Raise up a child in the way that you go, and when they get older, they will not depart from it, and they'll vote correctly.
Guess that's a natural way to gerrymander. Just have
It is.
a big family like that.
Just build a district.
This district is strictly for Tom and his family. They have their own representative.
They do. Hi, I'm the congressman of the Tom with all the kids district.
Yeah.
Bert from Owens Crossroads sends a picture of a cool cross up in Montana. Oh, wow. With like frozen ice blown across it and all that. That's very cool, Tom. Yeah, wow. And Tom, if you took that picture yourself, let me know. I'd love to know if you're the ones who actually took that. I love Montana. Mike from Florence, Alabama says they took a flight to Illinois to say they were fighting. However, the phrase is fight or flight. See, our people get it. You know what? I think also deep inside, they all know, and they're sitting in hotels right now in their little bubble, trying to make themselves feel better about what they're doing. That's my theory.
Do you think they're having sleepovers, like slumber parties at each other's hotels and sitting and giggling and watching like movies? And
well, I didn't even get into one of the stories that I had a moment ago that one of the problems that a judge had to intervene on, Ken Paxton, Attorney General for the state of Texas, he filed an action, and the court agreed with him that Beto O'Rourke was using his PAC money to help pay all their expenses and their flight and all this kind of stuff. And that could be seen as gratuitous or maybe even bribery. And so that got stopped.
oh, Beto. That's like
Beto.
Beta O'Rourke.
Yeah. Beta male O'Rourke. By the way, why do they listen to that guy? How many times has he lost? I mean,
Because he's like the Doug Jones in Alabama, and any like Democrat in Texas, I guess, gets kind of put on a pedestal. and because they're so red, other than the Democrats just become that crazy, that much more crazy. So I think that's why.
So he's a unicorn basically in Texas. He can actually run a race, string together a coherent sentence, even though it doesn't always work out well for him. And that makes him the hero of the Democrat Party in Texas.
Well, I mean, him and Doug Jones were at Alabama together at the Stop the Top whenever Trump came to speak at the University of Alabama. Remember, they did an event, and Beto O'Rourke and Doug Jones were the big speakers there. So I guess they're one and the same.
I guess so. Rick from Madison sends me something. I don't know what he's referring to. He says, didn't Texas just have a lawsuit resolved? They had several resolved, but I don't know which one you're talking about. They had quite a few resolved when the Biden administration had been suing to stop their efforts to impede illegal immigration, and those were all resolved. If you're asking about whether they had a redistricting lawsuit resolved, I don't recall that per se, and I don't want to guess. It could be. Oh, look, Shag's in. Shag Nasty the Atheist. Shag Nasty the Atheist has just texted in. He said, in a bubble trying to make themselves feel better. You mean like Truth Social and talk radio? Yes. Sure. That's what I mean. Certainly, Shag. A little different here, buddy. This is actually a place where people actually seek us out to see what we have to say. No one's going to their hotel rooms to knock on the door and see what they have to say except themselves. Hey, what'd you hear? Are we going back yet? I don't know. How long can I stay out of my job? I don't know. Who's paying the bill on this? It's not going on my credit card, is it? I don't know. What do we do? I don't know. Is there a plan? I don't know. That's what they're doing. That's their bubble.
I bet Governor Pritzker's going there every day with like goodies, like snack and,
baskets.
Yeah.
They've got like the welcome wagon meeting them there with a box of apples.
Yeah. Governor Pritzker goes and tucks them in at night before leaving.
Oh boy, it's all good. They're in safe hands. Hey, we're going to do something next. So Shag Nasty the Atheist, since you're tuned in, it's a perfect time for you to be on because I'm going to go into a dipper number 2 that I call a dim view of the dim views. That's dim, D-I-M, view of the dim, D-E-M views. I like my little play on words. I think it's worthy. It could be a bumper sticker. But nonetheless, I have a dim view of the dim's views. So that being said, I tell you what, one of the things that drives me crazy is the level of hyperbole and just absolute asinine behavior. When you've got people like Representative LaMonica McIver going and assaulting ICE agents as a member of Congress and then being indicted for it and then claiming it's racism. Okay, we're at a new place right now. Does she hate America? Then you've got people like Ilhan Omar, who is more proud of her Somalian heritage than she is of serving in the American Congress. And then you've got people like Jayapal and, Ayanna Pressley and AOC and Bernie Sanders. And you wonder, do y'all even like America? It's like they have a very, very, very debased view of the same nation that they are called upon to serve. The nation, by the way, to whom they swore an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution. And they don't care about the level of their rhetoric. Their rhetoric so often, and I don't mean everybody on the left, because I recognize there are people like Joe Manchin and others that were professional and maybe leftist, but
he's actually not a Democrat anymore, Joe Manchin.
That's true. He left. Thank you.
So now they have nobody.
Ain't nobody responsible left.
Yeah.
They all bugged out. But I got a clip here. It's only about 30 seconds. Maxine Waters, clip 1. I'm going to go with audio clip 1. For those of you watching a live stream, you'll actually see the video. But Maxine Waters is one of the most ridiculous. She's very cartoonish. Something about her strikes me as being someone who does not have it all together, but thinks she does. It doesn't strike me. That's the way it is. She thinks she has it together, but she really doesn't. And so she keeps doing things like it makes her sound tough, but it's irresponsible rhetoric like the one I'm about to play you. You ready? Go ahead and play it.
Nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
So what she's referring to there is the fact that Donald Trump said that crime is out of control in Washington, D.C. And so he's sending federal agents and members of the National Guard there to help augment the Metro PD to bring order to the streets and clean things up. Her response to that is to claim that Donald Trump, like, take cameras out there, watch everything they do. I don't care if you do that. Okay, fine. And pay attention to the details. Okay, I don't care. Stop right there. That's enough you all had to say. Make sure he's doing it right. That's all you had to say. But then she has to take it one step further and actually claim that Donald Trump is trying to lead us into a civil war. The level of irresponsible, I have a very dim view of people like Maxine Waters, who have no measure of decorum left. They don't make sense when they speak. They're kind of embarrassing, to be honest with you. Like Al Green, when he stood up on the floor of the House and shouted down the president during the State of the Union address. It just, you look at that and go, you have no measure of decorum. And I know that there are people who don't like certain members of the right. I get it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's outspoken, but I've never heard her literally say some of the asinine things that come out of Democrats' mouths. When we get back from this break, I've got a summary that was done of Democrat behavior, of which I have a very dim view. And we'll play that for you right after the break. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
He ends up becoming my attorney, and we're a little bit long for him, so I'm going to go into some of this because this is really cool. I've never told this part of the story in any media hits, and so now I'm up against the wall when I try to retain this attorney. The next day, I've got to take my plea or I've got to go to trial. So they've got witnesses showing up for my trial that day. So if I don't take the plea, I go to trial.
You're down to knuckle dragging.
Down to knuckle dragging. And you're an attorney. You kind of know how some of this stuff works. Yep. The judge says, you don't get a new attorney, buddy. No, he's not your attorney. Your attorney is this lady, and you either sign the plea or you go to trial. So I'm like, my grandma's like, my new supposed to be attorney's like, and the public defender comes over and she's like, hey, I don't know how this happened, but one of the witnesses in the case got stuck in traffic or whatever, and she's not going to be able to be here. She has to get back to work. And so they had to delay it, and they punted for 2 weeks. And in that 2 weeks, I'm able to have him retain, and he gets me into a mediation hearing. And in the mediation hearing, this is really cool too, negotiation tactics. They were never able to, so what a mediation is, they have a retired judge, his name was Judge Toth. I'd be in one room with my attorney, is how it's supposed to work. And it's supposed to be at the courthouse, and I'm in one room, the district attorney's in another room, I'm with my attorney, and Judge Toth goes back and forth. Okay? I think I should get 8 years. Well, we think you should get 32. Well, I think I should get 10. I think it's basically like horse trading, okay? Well, we couldn't get our calendars to line up to get it done at the courthouse, so she had to come to the county jail on Martin Luther King Day on her day off. Okay, and she's in there in her pajamas, the deputy district attorney. She's in there in her pajamas. She's absolutely pissed that she's there. And I can see this. I'm like, she doesn't want to be here. I've got 384 years. I've got nowhere to go. And she obviously doesn't want to be here. So I just kept dragging and dragging and dragging.
We discovered years ago the best time to buy a car is right before the staff leaves for a holiday weekend.
Yeah, it's like, go, go, go.
So you're in that mode right now. All right. She's in her pajamas.
She's in her pajamas. It's snowing outside. And she just doesn't want to be there. And so I keep dragging and keep counteroffering, and she loses. And she says, that's it. 15 years with the crime of violence. That's my final offer. No way with the violence in your crime and the assault cases that you've caught in county jail, these 2 extra assault cases, will I ever drop this crime of violence? And so on a 32-year sentence with a crime of violence, you're going to do 24. Okay, so that matters. It's a huge, you're going to do more of your time.
Yeah.
And then on a nonviolent, you're going to do maybe a third of your time or less. Okay. So I'm heavy focused on that crime of violence. Like, okay, we got her down to a decent year range, and I don't know where this came from. It had to have been a God thing. And I looked at my lawyer. I said, you don't tell Judge Toth anything. I said, you walk in there to that district attorney, go tell her that, my client doesn't want to end up in he wants to change his life. He doesn't want to end up in a maximum security prison with swastikas all over his face. He wants to change his life. He's willing to give you a year if you drop the crime of violence. And the way their thing works is like, oh, I get 16 instead of 15, cha-ching. And all of a sudden all that, conviction about crime of violence just went out the window.
So she got a trophy, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And so I gave her the year, which is that's good for her. So she drops the crime of violence, and I get 16 years with no crime of violence is what I ended up getting sentenced to. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
that
I
is
was
crazy. You are into sales.
Yeah. And I was the happiest person ever to be sentenced to 16 years. Like, yay, 16 years in prison. But again, everything's relative when you face it to 32 or 384. Yeah.
All right. You said in one interview I saw with you, I've forgotten, it's some folks that you had known, but they have their own podcast, Emily and somebody else. I've forgotten the guy's name, the husband and wife team.
Chris and Emily, yeah.
Yeah, Chris and Emily. But at one point you said in that solitary confinement where you began having that epiphany about accepting responsibility for your own actions and you're not a victim of that, you felt like God had thumped you. But you still weren't there yet.
Yeah.
But then you started meeting and hanging out with a guy who, in your words, what I saw was he began to drop seeds of the gospel in your life.
100%.
And was that in prison? Was that in county jail? Where was
prison.
That was prison.
Yeah. So here I am. God thumps me on the head and shows me it's my fault.
Right.
Shortly after that, I get into this negotiation hearing.
Right.
My heart's softened to the idea of God and him working in my life.
Because he has been.
Because he has been. And then I get 16 instead of 32, so now I'm looking at getting out in 5 years instead of 24 or never. So I knew God had moved. And so I'm like, okay.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. All right, I'm talking about the dim view of Dems. Dim views. I have a dim view of dim views. And listen, one of the things that really strikes me so often is that it's almost like they don't like America. They don't like our country. And they certainly don't like things that are usually considered to be like considerate. And when you watch some of the behavior, you think, okay, there are certain things you can cheer for. And the fact that Donald Trump brought it up doesn't make it bad. Like, for instance, the way they handled themselves at the State of the Union address. I guess technically it wasn't a State of the Union because that usually happens after at least a year in office. But Donald Trump gave an address in March where he addressed, and it was arousing. It was one of the best speeches I've ever heard him give. And he laid out, and he had a number of people there that he recognized, and he had some things that were worthy of applause. Well, it was so bad the way the Democrats handled themselves. I mean, so unprofessional. It was, listen, we don't have the traditions that you see in places like, Great Britain, where the House of Commons or the House of Lords, and they and make all kinds of noise. We don't, that's not our way. We might clap. We might do something that, that every once in a while, one person will yell, say their name or something like that. But the Democrats as a party organized themselves for unprofessionalism on that day. And I found a clip. And if you're watching the live stream, you'll get to watch it. You good on this? All right. So I got clip number 2 here. This is Caroline Leavitt recounting in toto of the things that the Dems did at the state of, and it gives you a clear indication of the level of unprofessionalism in the Democrat side of the party. All right, so go ahead and play it.
Of Democrats was completely disgraceful.
The night began with several Democrats turning their backs on the president, then walking out.
Look at what's happening. The Democrats are not even acknowledging the cabinet right now.
One of the ugliest displays of partisan politics in American history.
It started out with Al Green getting thrown off the House floor.
I have never seen such a disgraceful display as the Democrats put on.
Then they had the ridiculous paddles, which now social media is roasting.
What we saw tonight was truly Dems in disarray.
It was the most shameful moment in the history of presidential addresses in that beautiful chamber.
Democrats did not clap for Mark Fogel, a freed American hostage standing beside his 95-year-old mother.
They didn't stand for the young man whose father was a slain police officer, whom Trump admitted to West Point in the middle of the speech. They wouldn't stand for him.
Democrats didn't stand to keep men out of women's sports They couldn't even clap for a girl who got her head smashed in by a man on a volleyball court.
The Democratic Party could not be further from being pro-woman. They are anti-woman and they are anti-reality.
Democrats didn't stand for an innocent and beautiful child who is surviving brain cancer.
And then Trump announced the capture of a terrorist, someone who killed 13 heroic Americans in Afghanistan. But nope, can't stand for that.
They couldn't even clap for two mothers whose daughters were killed by illegal aliens.
They don't stand for anything humane.
It looked like they were at the kids' table.
It's just literally a failure of epic proportions.
Democrats exposed themselves as the party of insanity and hate. The party that wants to put America last.
It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way.
Yeah. He's right. It's very sad. It shouldn't be this way. Now, I recognize that this is a partisan show, all right? I make no bones about it. I'm a longtime Republican. I'm a conservative, which, by the way, being a Republican and being a conservative is not always the same thing. But I'm a longtime Republican, a former elected Republican official. I was also, oh, by the way, the chairman of the Republican Party in my county. I helped flip my county entirely red from being entirely blue in the past. I was a member of the Alabama Executive Committee, statewide committee. I am absolutely 100% a Republican. I am also absolutely 100% a bona fide conservative. I believe in the principles of free market, capitalism. I believe in liberty. I believe in the Bill of Rights being sacred. I'm a strict constructionist. As an attorney, I believe that the Constitution is written and it is not meant to be just gerrymandered, if you will, by those who want to see something different just because they can. At the same time, I also know what it means to stand in the mix and to debate. And I never minded debating. I never minded debating with someone who had a different view as long as they truly believed it. But I will tell you right now that I also always minded when someone had a differing view and they had no measure of decorum in the way they presented it. You can differ in your view and still figure out how to say it. You can. That's part of bulletproof influence. I was on another radio show yesterday morning and I talked about a piece I wrote a while back, bulletproof influence. What is that? We say it all the time on Rightside. Bulletproof influence. It means that you are so steeped in the positions that you have. I don't mean like unalterable. I mean like principled. I mean like at the core of your belief system. Things like your faith, things like liberty. And when you look at that and you say, okay, I am, at the same time, bulletproof influence is not influence if you cannot convey it. And so if you are unable to shout without rhetoric, if you cannot celebrate someone's victories because it means that it looks like you're giving something to the guy that you hate, like Donald Trump, if you can't do those things, you have no influence. You are sacrificing your opportunity for influence. Bulletproof influence is like the Apostle Paul, who said, I become all things to all people that I might win some all the more. He knew what faith was. He knew what Christianity was, but he also knew he had to be able to present it in a way that his audience could hear it. Not that he ever changed the message. Never once. He never changed the gospel. What he did, though, was he spoke it in Greek, or he spoke it in Hebrew, or he spoke it in a way with terminology that people could understand, or he used illustrations, or he found a way to speak to his audience, because you do not have bulletproof influence if you turn people away from your message with absolutely asinine behavior. And that's what I'm seeing. And so my dim view of the dim views is not based on what they are as much as the way they present them. That's a huge deal, y'all. And they don't seem to have that figured out. They absolutely do not seem to understand how to message anymore without having hate and absolutely, hyperbolic rhetoric, and then the inability to even celebrate that which is actually working. That, my friends, is something they're going to have to deal with. I got text messages. I got a little more on this stuff. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
But I was always open to God. I always prayed to God. I always knew that God was real. I had some experiences in church growing up that were like bad experiences, but good experiences. I don't know how to really describe it. Like, these people had something that I wanted, but I also saw how judgmental and kind of hypocritical that they were. Yeah. And so I was just like, but I knew that God was real. And so I prayed. Like, when I was a kid, I prayed. Through my addiction, I prayed. When I was a fugitive, I prayed a bunch. And when I was in county jail, I prayed even more. Wondering about what my sentence. So I knew God was real, but I didn't understand how Jesus factored into it, and no one ever really taught me about Jesus. So yeah. I was agnostic. I knew that God was there, but I didn't understand how it worked. Right? Yeah. And so I get to the first prison I get to is called Huerfano County Correctional Center, which is in Walsenburg, Colorado. You go in there, you got in Colorado you wear greens, and so you got your greens on, and you've got a couple extra pairs of greens and a couple pairs of state issued underwear, like a cup and a spoon, and you walk into your unit, and the thing slams behind you, and you're now in your unit. That's got 120 guys in there. You're like, okay, what's about to happen? Because the new guy comes in, fish, fresh fish. And here comes this big, huge dude with a Semper Fi tattoo on his arm.
Oh, former Marine, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, always a Marine, they say. True. I've made the mistake of calling him a former Marine and been corrected 17 times. So, but he walks up and reaches out and shakes my hand. He says, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian, and this is a faith pod." And so all the movies that were going off in my head about the doors slamming and someone coming up to stab me having to fight to see if I was tough, like there's all the things that I thought could have, would have, should have. But this big, burly, huge dude who definitely could have beat me up is like, "My name's Charles. I'm a Christian. This is a faith pod." That wasn't on the, on the bingo card. That's correct. We're not on the bingo card. Yep. And I'm like, okay, Charles, what is a faith pod? And he goes, "Man, we do discipleship in here, and we do Bible studies, we do discipleship, and I take seminary classes on the weekends, and we do praise and worship every single morning." And they did, and
he's saying words you don't even know.
Yeah, and I'm like, I have to get out of here immediately. That was my response to that.
Put you in the cult ward.
Get me out of here. You ever seen Happy Gilmore when? Anyway, there's the scene with the lady in the old folks home where she falls and "Get me out of here." But that's how I felt. I was like, I got to get out of here. But it's prison, and it turns out you can't get out of there. Who knew? And so I was stuck, and it was a good thing. And Charles really just became my friend. He didn't browbeat me. He didn't, he wasn't over the top. He was my friend, and you get in there, you don't have coffee, you don't have soups, you don't have, sweats, you don't have any of that stuff. And so he gave me, all those things. Like, "Here, you need some of this, you need some of this. Hey, if you need anything, let me know." So he just became my friend, and his conversation would turn to a subject or a situation. He would kind of Socratically ask me questions.
He would weave Jesus into it.
And he would weave Christ into the questioning and say, "Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about that?" And I remember one of the funniest ones he did was, this is pre-saved Brian in prison, okay? And I'm talking about, girls and having sex with girls and all this other stuff. And Charles just looks at me, he's like, "But wouldn't it be like so much more beautiful if like you just didn't have sex again until you got married?" And I died laughing so hard and just pointing at Charles like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. But you know what? Flash forward, that's exactly what I ended up doing. Yeah. And it was because of that question that happened before I got saved that Charles did. So he's or go ahead.
No, I got to say, part of my weird resume is that I spent 7 years in full-time ministry with an organization called Young Life.
Yeah.
Which is headquartered in Colorado Springs, by the way. I spent time in Springs because of that. Yeah. Love that city. Probably back when you were actually messing up things. But we called it relational evangelism.
Yeah.
It was earning the right to share your faith is what we called it.
Yeah.
And it was not relationship, with a catch. It was relationship with purpose. And also, oh, by the way, if you don't love Jesus, I'm still going to love you.
Yeah.
So it was true friendship, but we earned the right to share our faith, we called it. And there's a passage of scripture just came to me while we're sitting here talking, hearing you say it. I believe it's in Thessalonians, 1 Thessalonians. It says, "Because we loved you so much, we were content not just to share the gospel, but our very lives as well."
Yeah.
Meaning the gospel's really important, but I'm even going to share who I am in a And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. This one, goes from Wow, Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, all the way down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the line from there to what we call, once again, Fort Benning. And then straight on up and look at it, we got big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. And that's just the radio. Then there's a ton of y'all out there in the whole wide world, going to the World Wide Web and dialing into this live stream of the show, looking inside the studio as we talk, in places like, Facebook and YouTube and Rumble and X and our website, rightsidemedia.org. And then there's all you podcasters who catch it after the fact. I know, because you tell me, listen, and we can see the numbers. We know you're out there. The bottom line for us is this. I say those things every time to just basically let you know that we see where you're listening, and the fact that you catch it in whatever format means the world to us, because the only reason why we do this is for y'all. You are a huge part of our lives. Thank you very much. I'll tell you, somebody else is a huge part of our lives. That'd be Jeff Rowe from Indiana, and he's on the phone already. Jeff Rowe, did they ever get you a load last night and get you home by a decent hour?
I got home at 11 o'clock last night.
Whew, that's a day, brother.
Almost 5 hours.
That was,
almost 5 hours for a trailer.
Golly, Bob.
Thankfully, there's one there today.
Well, good. So are you already on the road back home then?
Yeah, I'm almost up here at the place where I met you on the road that day. There,
oh, yeah.
The pilot station.
That was a hoot for our listeners. It was a real hoot. There was one day when I wasn't on. I think I was in Huntsville for a meeting, and I was coming back down, and you texted me. Jeff texted me and said, "Why aren't you on the air?" And I said something, I had business, and he said, "Where are you now?" And I said, "Well, I'm traveling back." Wait a minute, where are you? And we figured out we were both about to pass the same exit from opposite directions, so we pulled into a truck stop and hung out for a few minutes. That was cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
By the way, speaking of pretty cool, you're going on vacation next week. Are we going to hear from you at all, or are you going to be too busy sunning yourself in the beach?
Well, I'll be in Alabama. I'm
That's
going
true.
down to Gulf Shores anyway.
That's right.
So yeah, you'll hear something from me, I'm sure.
Well, good.
Maybe not quite as much. But,
well, speaking of hearing from you, what's on your mind today, brother? What do you think about all this stuff?
You know, I think that the Democrats and everything, we need to rename them the Reflection Party.
Reflection Party.
Because the Reflection Party, because everything they say about us and everything is all reflect that you could be talking to a mirror, and they're describing themselves completely.
The Reflection Party.
Yeah. In fact, I think that's what new merch for you would be. I think you need to get some little compact mirrors or whatever and put Right Side Radio Democrat Reflection mirror on there where when somebody's talking about things or whatever, you can just hold the mirror up to them and say, I guess you're talking to yourself, you're just keep on talking.
Well, there's only one problem with that. Vampires don't have a reflection.
Well, that's true. I was going to say you need to take some of them on CNN with you there, so that you can hold it up to them and ask you what's going on. Well, you must be talking to yourself.
Well, I tell you what I may do though is I've noticed that we always get a coffee mug and they put like water in it so that we got something to sip on. And I think they're usually CNN mug. I need to take a Right Side Radio mug up there with me. See if they'll let me use it on the air. That'd be cool.
Well, you definitely need a Right Side Radio pen on your lapel.
Well, it may be time to do that. I have been wearing like a military award pin.
We have a Right Side pin.
We do. I've got lapel pins. I wear them when I go to events. I wore one at the town hall that I hosted recently. But
you need to wear them almost like medals in the service there. Well, I got this Right Side pin from debating this Democrat and from doing this one bill. have your whole big spray on your lapel there of all your right
be like
be
like the Awanas in Baptist church when you're growing up and you get your perfect attendance awards to hang on your suit when you go to church on Sunday morning.
There you go.
Well, what do you think about Democrats? Do they have any decorum left? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Excuse me. But it's like I say, they talk about the Civil War.
Yeah.
But we need to remind them that all the Democrats, the complete Confederate states that all succeeded were all Democrats. So we need to remind them that they're the ones who had the first Civil War. And we need to remind them that they're the ones that started the Ku Klux Klan and the Jim Crow laws and everything else that they claim that we have been doing. That's why I say we need the Right Side mirrors, so that we can just, when they start talking and accusing you of something, you just hold it up to them and say, well, yeah, I know I see you're talking to yourself.
Well, I don't. The thing is, I don't know if they even hear themselves anymore. Do you think? Do you think that people like Swalwell and Maxine Waters and AOC and Ilhan Omar, do you think they even recognize that what they're saying is just like to the point of being immature, or are they like all in thinking I made a good point?
I think it's almost like a mental disease. I mean, you have to be kind of screwed in the head to believe the things they believe anyway. And so I think they might be suffering from delusion because that's all I hear coming from them. Like I say, when they accuse they might as well have accused President Lincoln of being a slave owner.
Yeah.
when the opposite is true, and yet they preach it, and then so many people believe it is what's crazy that they take that stuff hook, line, and sinker because Democrats can't be liars,
Hey, by the way, just so you know, I just got a text in from David from Bucky's. He just said, Phil, on CNN, you ought to use one of those bulletproof influence glasses. That would probably blow their minds.
I don't know why you couldn't take it with you. That would be the thing to do.
I may have to do it. We'll see what happens. Hey, listen, brother,
let you on there with it.
You be safe on the road, and we'll talk at you again sometime soon. All right.
All right. Have a good one, Phil.
See you, buddy. I'm glad they didn't make him wait for 5 hours today. That just boggles my mind. What a gig. I think now that I realize he sent me a text earlier, and he said that because they're limited in the hours they are allowed to be on the road. I think he made it back like with 5 minutes to spare or something like that. Otherwise, he would have been required to be at a hotel overnight.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it is. Shag Nasty the Atheist taking issue says, Phil, please continue not correcting Jethro for historical accuracy. We all know the KKK is actually liberal. What? Is he missing part of his text? I got dots right after that. I don't know what he's saying.
Oh, no, I think that's all I meant to say. I think he may have been being sarcastic and saying that the KKK was not liberal.
I'm pretty sure, too, if we look back, we'll find out that it was Democrats who, opposed the modern civil rights era and tried to keep it at bay. It was Democrats that fought the emancipation of the slaves. It was Democrats who, listen, at every turn, I'm not sure how they keep getting a pass on their own behavior, but they want to hold us accountable for the alleged crimes of the past and claim that somehow Republicans are the woeful party of, lacking of freedom. Tammy from Huntsville checked in earlier, and she said there are a few people so vile as the ignorant Maxine Waters. Term limits in Congress. Bruce from Springville says Maxine Waters is like Aunt Esther from Sanford and Son, but with brain damage. She is. You've never seen Sanford and Son, have you?
No.
Sorry. Okay. Well, it's from the 70s, so don't worry. But a comedian named Red Fox used to have a show called Sanford and Son. And I saw something that said there may be like a remake or a reboot of Sanford and Son coming out. I don't know if it's true or not. Eddie Murphy starring in it. But Sanford and Son had a Aunt Esther who used to come in and, oh, Jesus, I'm going to tell you how it is. And so she was, the show was hilarious. That's back when you were allowed to be funny.
I'm pulling up a picture of Aunt Esther right now. See. Yeah,
what you really ought to do is get an Aunt Esther behavior like hallelujah. She waving that Bible in the air and telling him, you listen to me, you crony old man. That's Maxine Waters.
Yeah, I think that assessment is actually pretty accurate.
I think
at the picture.
I think Nofre from Lexington checking in. He says, getting in on the show late today. Have you covered the intelligence officer who worked for the Democrats informed? Yes, I did. That was the opening of the show. The Adam Schiff authorized a leak of classified information over the Russia collusion hoax, not to mention his mortgage fraud. Yeah, there's that too. Oh, I see you found a picture of Aunt Esther. That is Maxine Waters.
With brain damage, yeah. So
okay.
we can't be that mean to Aunt Esther.
Oh. Randy from Madison checked in and says, was Maxine Waters willed the James Brown wig? I don't know. That's a great point. Now, she didn't get his fur, his mink coat, but nonetheless. JT Lacey Springs says, Maxine, we opened up a whole can here. Maxine Waters, her look and her demeanor reminds me of someone who has been constipated for a very long time. Well, now, and on that, I think we're going to take a break. We'll take a break. We'll come right back. Text in if you want to. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We will be right back. With you. That's where Charles was, it sounds like.
Yep, 100%.
Very cool. All right, so you're hanging out with Charles.
Hanging out with Charles. We're Walsenburg, about a year in, I don't remember exactly how it breaks down. He gets shipped to Sterling Correctional Facility. So I'm there on my own. Huerfano County Correctional Center in Walsenburg was a private prison. So it's like Corporations Correction of America, or I guess they call it some other company now, Core Civic. It was one of those prisons, and it got shut down. And so I get moved to Benton County, which is another Core Civic prison. It was Corrections Corporation of America at the time. I'm there for 6 months, and then they moved me to Canyon City, to Arrowhead Correctional Center, which is like Camp Cupcake. Okay. And so they moved me to Camp Cupcake, and they didn't know they made a mistake with my sentence and how much time I have. I'm not allowed to be at Camp Cupcake, right? I'm not supposed to be. And I'm there for like 2 months, and it's up in the mountains in Canyon City, Colorado. I'm like, man, I can get used to this. It was like God gave me a little vacation. And then once they figured it out, they ended up shipping me to Sterling Correctional Facility. I walk out on the yard at Sterling Correctional Facility, which is a massive prison, right? There's 4 separate yards, so I didn't have to land on the yard with him. But I walk out on they call it the 20s yard where I was, and boom, there's Charles.
How about that?
Right away. So
back together again.
Yeah.
Pick up where you left off.
Yeah, and he was a softball coach. That was his way of doing evangelism. He put together a softball team, and it was like, is it? I remember how shocked I was when I walked into a medium security prison. So there's like killers and everything in this prison, and there's a softball team which requires these things called metal bats. I'm like, they have metal bats in prison? Like, that seems counterintuitive.
Who thought this was okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he did. He coached a softball team, and I was the third baseman, and you know, that was his way that he would evangelize guys. And so when I get to Sterling, he's like, hey, what was great about Sterling is they had grass. So I was excited to play softball there, but that's neither here nor there. And so he's like, man, you want to play softball again? Yeah. So he's just doing the same thing, friends, ministering, planting seeds. And he goes, man, Brian, you got parole coming up in a couple of years. You really need to get you some certificates for the parole board. I'm like, great. And he's like, well, I'm the chaplain's assistant. I can get you into some programs. And the chaplain's office was over all the programs, secular or otherwise. I'm like, cool, yeah, get me in. And he gets me into them, and it's they're faith-based programs. And so I got in there, and I'm like, Charles. So I get
snuck
in.
that gospel in on you again.
He did. And but it was really interesting. And I get in there, and the first program was like kumbaya, come as you are. You know, it was very, you know, it was not very high theology. It was not rigorous. It was just like, we want to love on you. But in that program, there was like 5 or 6 other guys that were like Charles, guys who'd been down for like 20 years that were men, and they were steeped in the word. And I got around those guys, and I'm just like, geez, like I'm drawn to this, but I can't admit it. And so that program ends, and I went to Charles. I'm like, hey man, I think I need some more certificates for the parole board. And he's like, okay,
wink, wink, nod, nod.
And so he gets me into this next one. Well, it was very high theology, and it was very rigorous, and it was very much, this is what the Word of God says. It's called The Truth Project with Dr. Del Tackett, which is Christian Worldview and Apologetics.
I got it written down. I was going to ask you about it.
So good. Like, I highly recommend everything Del Tackett does. Everyone should just go and look at all of it. I mean, he did Answers in Genesis. He does The Truth Project. He's got, you know, so many great things. Watch, you know, but what this one is Christian Worldview and Apologetics. You come in, you watch an hour-long video, and then you have an hour-long table discussion afterwards. And I would watch the hour-long video that was, you know, this is what the Word of God says, this is this, but it's like applying it to creation and politics and culture. And it was
giving you a base.
Yeah. And it was so good. Yeah, so good. But when you're not a Christian, it's not so good, right? And so I'm like, this is bullcrap. I hate this. You guys are stupid. And I did. I told those guys at the table, if you believe this crap, you guys are idiots. You're stupid. And I always tell people, it's like, just because they're Christians doesn't mean they're not convicts, okay? And so, like, you tell someone, even us, like, if someone came up and, like, put their finger in our face and said, you're stupid for believing Jesus, I don't know. I hope that I wouldn't punch him in the face, right? But so here I am in prison doing just that, and Charles is just done. He's just, like, throwing his hands in the air. He's like, oh, my gosh. And so this goes on for, like, 2 or 3 weeks where I'm, like, full tilt arguing with these guys. And we walk back to the unit, and you know, so here's the education building, our unit's over here, and there's a sidewalk that you got to walk around like that. And we're walking back, and we get to about right here, and Charles just looks over at me, and he says, Brian, why don't you give him a chance? Why don't you give him a chance? Jesus being to give him a chance, right? And for whatever reason, in God's sovereignty, as I look at it, that was the moment, okay? And all my guard, all my, you know, defensive mechanisms, for whatever reason, I just said, okay. And kind of as I said earlier, I knew God was real, but I didn't understand Jesus. And he's asking me, to give Jesus a chance, not God, but Jesus, which was different.
And we are back. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. Couple of quick texts before I go. Bobby from Huntsville says, required viewing for JP, Sanford and Son, and All in the Family. That's classic stuff, man.
Noted. I'll have to check them out.
Sanford and Son, the original, not some Eddie Murphy remake.
Yeah.
Sanford and Son and All in the Family. David at Bucky sent us a meme of it's Aunt Esther saying, I'm sick of this foolishness. I can see her saying it too. Sick of this foolishness. And then Jeff from Indiana quickly checked in on the text. He goes, Phil, LaWanda Page, which is her name, aka Aunt Esther, was once known as the bronze goddess of fire as she was a dancer early on. I did not know this. There's some trivia for you. John from Huntsville has the grades in. He says, JP and Jeff from Indiana both get an A double plus for their equally outstanding performances, which means today's winner is obviously the magnificent Phil Williams. Well, thank you. With an A triple plus for his absolutely brilliant performance. Congratulations. John, I thank you for that. Thank you very much. Last one, Matt in Madison says, Maxine Waters reminds me of a Muppet in the balcony with the two old grumpy men. Yes. Okay. If Gollum had a girlfriend.
Oh, gosh.
It's so precious. Get away from me, you fool.
Just imagine, Jim Carville and Maxine Waters together. Yeah, that's pretty much what you get.
Wow. Tomorrow's got some major events happening. You were bringing that up a minute ago.
Yeah. Apparently Trump and Putin will be meeting tomorrow at a summit in Alaska.
Yep.
I don't know. I really don't expect much to be like, we're not going to see an end to the war tomorrow. However, I do think it's massive and symbolic, considering we had an American government that refused to even talk to the Russian side at all. And now we have, whenever you think about, Putin, I think it is massive that we have a president that is actually willing to talk to Putin and try to, bring an end to this conflict. Like I said, I don't think there's actually going to be anything accomplished from this, but I do think it's a big symbolic event. And I think Trump, like you said, is going to call it a massive listening session. So, we'll see. I think Putin is going to continue doing what he's doing and trying to, hurl an offensive to try to get all he can, land grab all he can before, bringing the war to an end. But like I said, I do think it's massively symbolic.
It's going to be. We're going to wind up talking about it tomorrow. It's going to be a major time. Tomorrow's Wednesday. Yeah, we're talking about it tomorrow. But you're right. And for those who say that Trump shouldn't be spending time with that man, yes, he should.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like he's going over there to love on him. This isn't going to be like some group hug session. It's going to be probably pretty uncomfortable for Putin, because I imagine Trump, being Trump, believes in his own ability in the art of the deal to be the man in the room at the table, looking the other person in the eye and telling him what he wants. If the other guy doesn't want it, Trump will get up and walk out. He did that multiple times. Negotiating with North Korea, he got up and walked out. Negotiating with, I can't remember who it was now. He got up and walked out. May have been Russia, but it may have been China, actually. He has been known to go into these discussions with an agenda, and if the other side shows no signs of wanting to have an actual discussion, he'll get up and walk out. And that also, by the way, leaves a reflection on the person left sitting at the table. So I don't know what we're going to see tomorrow. Trump has already passed the point that he's worried about trying to offend Putin. He's already called him, all kinds of names in the press. He's threatened major sanctions on his country. He's also recently gotten NATO on board, and he's selling weapons to NATO that NATO can then turn around and give or sell to the Ukrainians if they want to. Trump is not at all in a lovey-dovey mood with Putin, but Trump is right to go talk to him. And I would remind the world, too, that it was Ronald Reagan at the Reykjavik summit with Gorbachev that was able to capitalize on a number of things in that meeting. And later on, the Iron Curtain came down. Many people believe that those summits where the two presidents sat down together are a part of what cracked the ice and brought down the Iron Curtain and changed the world forever. So yeah, you got to do this. It's part of statesmanship. And we'll just wait and see how it plays out.
And Putin wanted this meeting himself, and so who knows? Maybe they'll get face to face and eventually work something out. Not holding my breath for it, but like you said, I think it's a big deal regardless whether they get anything done or not, because it's just both sides talking to each other again.
And
I think the aspect of being face to face too helps a lot.
And Zelensky's not going to be there.
No.
Which some are saying, how can Zelensky not be at the table? Because I'm telling you right now, Zelensky does not need to be at this table. Not this one. There will be one. There will be a table. If Trump can get this meeting to go forward. Trump has already had one-on-one with Zelensky multiple times. Remember I would call the informal session where they pulled 2 chairs off the side of the room and sat there face to face?
Putin wasn't there then?
No, he wasn't. And I'm going to tell you, and listen, what also has to be talked about are things, every mediation that I've ever been to as an attorney, you don't sit in the same room together. You have to have the ability to be with the mediator off to the side. You have to have the ability to have very frank conversations, to tell what your views are, to tell people why you got a problem, and also say, I won't accept this. But then the other side begins to read your cues and say, but you would go here. So we'll see. I don't know. The end result is I'm glad they're doing it. I look forward to seeing how it plays out. And I can't imagine that it would hurt.
I love too that some liberals are claiming that Trump meeting him in Alaska is like sort of like a gesture to Putin, almost like they're trying to say, like, I don't know what they're trying to say. It's been funny though, because they're saying, oh, well, him meeting in Alaska is like almost saying, Alaska is Putin's land or something like that. It's like
stupid
what?
thing to say. What an absolutely stupid thing to say.
Yeah.
It's not like we went on the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia.
If anything, it would almost be like the other way around of, you're going to come into my turf, which is Alaska, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's funny. They're trying to cope and say that this is somehow Trump, giving something to Putin or trying to, I don't know, warm up to Putin and say, we'll meet in Alaska. It's like,
where are they meeting, by the way? Do you know?
I'm not sure exactly in Alaska.
I would imagine in the state capital or some resort or something like that. I mean, does Trump have a resort hotel there?
Probably. Who knows?
Can you play golf in Alaska? I guess you can.
Maybe, yeah.
But yes, can you see?
It's in Anchorage.
Oh, well, I would figure the state capital would be where it is.
Okay, so yeah, Anchorage. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll see how it plays out. That is tomorrow. Hey, I was going to end. I had a whole stack of stuff here I was going to do a dipper on. Things that make you go, I'm going to pass. Obviously, I'm not have time for a dipper now, but within a couple of minutes left, I got to point out one story that was so weird that I had to bring it up. I don't know if you saw this or not. It happened about 10 days ago. The Blaze is where I got it from. I hold a copy of the article in my calloused former paratrooper hands. Remember Jim Acosta, the CNN journalist who was let go from CNN? He was just widely seen as being somebody that was just not willing to live within the confines of what serious journalism really is. Well, he's so way out there now. He just did an interview with the AI-generated avatar of a kid that was killed in a mass shooting. This kid, Joaquin Oliver.
This was awful.
Yeah, it was awful. Joaquin Oliver was killed in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting back in I forgot what year that was in, 2018, I believe. Yeah, the Parkland shooting. Parkland, and so he did this exploitive interview with an AI-generated avatar of the dead kid. And I find the whole thing to be weird. And I look at that and think, he doesn't even know it's weird. And he did it. And he's being excoriated for it. I bring that up as a talking point. I thought it was fascinating. That being said, we're done for the day, but we're back tomorrow. I'm telling you, people, there are more of us than there are of them. Oh, yeah, God is still on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you tomorrow.